All right, we're recording.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I want to call to order our meeting for the PRAC, Oregon City Parks and Rec Advisory Committee for Thursday, January 27th. It is 7:02, and first item on the agenda is introductions. And as is customary, I'll just we'll do this in two parts tonight. One for the previous members of PRAC, and then we'll do some introductions as we do roll call for the new members. So if I call out your name, just wave so anyone watching knows who you are. And we'll just go on my screen. I've got Tim West.
Hello.
And then Karen Morey.
Present.
Derek Haverkamp.
That's Brent Haverkamp, but right here.
What did I say?
Darren.
Wow. I don't know what I did. I
That's
messed
okay.
that up. I probably because of that big long name you have, and I couldn't, and I just had read the one next to it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to switch over to my iPad here. Hang on.
All right, no, you go ahead. You're fine. So those are our three current members, or previous members of PRAC, I should say, current and previous. And I am Troy Bollinger, chair. And moving to our new members of PRAC. So just to give everybody an kind of an overview of how this took place. The process for selecting new members of committees in the city is that the chair, vice chair, and mayor conduct interviews with all applicants, and then the role of the chair and the vice chair to provide feedback to the mayor, and then the mayor uses that feedback plus her own observations to make the appointments. And so she has appointed three members, and I'll call your name, and if you want to wave and say hi, tell us a little bit about yourself. Try to keep it under maybe a minute or even less. Tell us maybe how long you've lived here, a little bit about your family or personal life if you choose, and what you're most looking forward to, what mostly interested you and your desire to be on PRAC. So Steve Williams, will you go first, please?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, good evening, Steve Williams. I've lived here in Oregon City since 1993. I spent a 40-year career working in fish and wildlife, primarily with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. My interest is to give back something to my community. Hopefully some of my experiences with fish and wildlife and some of the natural resource management issues that I got involved with can help and provide some input and hopefully meaningful help to the committee. I look at it like I've got a lot to learn, so thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Steve. Joey, is Knopf? Is that the correct way to pronounce that?
Yep, that's right.
Okay,
Knopf.
Joey Knopf. Go for it.
Sure. Joey Knopf, as Troy said. I've lived in Oregon City for about 2 years now, but I grew up in this area. I was born and raised in Woodburn, and so moved back to Oregon a couple of years ago and settled in Oregon City, just outside of Oregon City. Very happy to be here. I was very much looking forward to getting involved in the community and saw this as a great opportunity to do that, and really looking forward to working with you all.
Thank you, Joey. We love having you. Appreciate you being here.
Sure.
Ken Worcester.
Okay, it's Worcester, no H, but that's a common mistake. So
Okay.
it's just everybody does it out here, so that's the way it goes. Hi everybody. I'm recently retired as well. I spent 40 years as the Parks and Recreation Director for City of West Lynn. So right across the river. I've lived in Oregon City for about 2.5 years, and I guess my main motivation is I finally have time to dedicate some time to the community I live in, as opposed to serving a community that I didn't live in for that long. So I'm excited, probably right now, mostly to be involved in the Park Master Plan update. That's always fun. It's important work, and my goal in that is to kind of help make sure that we have a master plan that is actually doable. There's lots of times you see plans that you know, are really difficult to complete and or almost impossible to complete. So I just want to try to maybe add some input to make sure that it's something that we can attain. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So with the addition of Steve, Joey, and Ken, we now have 8 of our 9 voting positions filled. And we excuse Andy Crump tonight, who is unable to be with us, but has an excused absence. So we do still have an open 9th position, and then open non-voting youth position is also available that we would like to fill. So real quick, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because we'll get to know these gentlemen and they'll get to know us over time. But if any of the members of PRAC have questions or comments real quick, just to get to know our new people, now would be the time to ask those or share your thoughts. Karen, I see your hand is up.
Actually, Troy, I have a motion.
Okay, well, let's hold on the motion.
All right,
I'll get to
but
you,
I want to
let's-
welcome Ken because I'm hearing wonderful things about him.
Well, thank you.
Any other,
Don't believe everything you hear.
Yeah, well, I'll check my sources, Ken.
Oh, yeah, please.
any other questions or comments from committee members? Brent, please. You're muted. You're muted, Brent.
Thank you. Sorry, everybody. Ken Worcester, did I hear that you were the Parks and Recreation Director for 40 years? Is that correct?
You're muted, Ken.
You're muted, Ken.
I clicked on somebody else. I actually was only the director for probably 25 years.
Okay.
But I worked for the city for 40.
Okay,
Only.
great.
So
Only
Brent,
25.
Only 25.
Oh,
Any other comments or questions for our new members? Well, great. Well, we're happy to have you. Karen, is your motion about anything on the agenda or something not on the agenda?
It is on the agenda at this point in the agenda.
Okay, so I'm not understanding. Is it about the new members or about the minutes, which is next?
No, it's actually reorganizing the agenda. The nominations and elections should normally be at the beginning of this agenda after the introduction of the new officers. You were elected for 1 year in January 2021. And I went back and reviewed that today. And you took over after the introductions, served in January as chair, served through December. We now need to have nominations and elections for a new chair for the balance of this election. I move that item number 6 under general business, nomination of chair, vice chair, be moved to item 1A and retitled election of officers.
I second that emotion.
Okay, so now we're open up for discussion. And I'll go ahead and lead that discussion since it was my recommendation to move this. The bylaws states that the election is to take place at the January meeting. So it's not correct, Karen, that it should be at the beginning. It is correct that it has been at the beginning. And the bylaws simply say January. And so anytime in the agenda that seems appropriate would be acceptable. The reason I moved the agenda, moved it down on the agenda is really for one reason. And that is because we have 7 members here that are all eligible to be chair or vice chair. And 3 of those members are new, which means when nominations take place, we have 3 members that don't know any of the other 4, nor do they know each other. And we have 4 current members that don't know anything about the other 3 other than their introduction they made. And so my rationale in there is throughout the course of this meeting, as we have discussions and questions and understanding and some kind of interaction with the committee members, at least we'd have some idea of the person we could potentially be voting for. I would argue that if somebody is nominated to be chair or vice chair that I don't even know, that it would be appropriate that I would abstain from that vote because I don't know who I'm voting for. So if half of us abstain because we don't know the other half, we're going to get a watered down vote. And by moving it to the end, we get a better, more educated vote, having at least had one meeting of interaction. That's my rationale. I think it makes sense. It's still within the January meeting as required. And there's nothing that states at what point it needs to happen. It would be the next chair's decision if they wanted to continue that process next January or if they wanted to move it to the beginning. Any other questions, comments, or discussion on that?
And Troy, I will clarify. You have taken on one meeting more than you were elected to serve for. And we're not going to know anybody. This has been an odd and interesting, honestly, 3 years as we deal with COVID.
Right.
And you name it. But you do not get an additional meeting because you reorganize the agenda. I want the agenda put back the way the agenda has always appeared. And again, my motion is that we move the nominations and elections to this point in the agenda and have our election for the balance of this meeting.
Well, I appreciate that. Just to be clear, this is not so I can get to conduct one more meeting. I mean, we're looking at a total of maybe an hour difference of time. And so it's not for the purpose of one more meeting. And so that's completely, I think, irrelevant of the question. But Tim, you have your hand up. So your time for question, comments, discussion.
Thank you, Troy. I think that welcome all new members. I appreciate you guys being on board. This is great. I think all of you have cleared a big, huge hurdle just by being on this board, gaining the confidence of Troy and the assistant director or head of our committee, as well as the mayor. And if they have confidence in you, so should we, having you aboard as a part of our club here. I think that moving this to the nomination of the committee's chair and vice chair up to the top is important, just because we've got to go ahead and pass the crown. We're not going to go ahead and learn any more about anybody too much in depth during this long meeting, but I think that I would second the motion of Karen to go ahead and move this up to the top.
Thank you, Tim. Any other questions or comments for this discussion period from committee members? I see none. Is Justin polling for us tonight? Or is
Yeah,
Ken?
I can poll.
Yeah,
Yeah, we poll everybody on the motion in a second. So it was a motion by Karen and a second by Tim West.
Okay. Brent Haverkamp,
Aye.
Tim West,
Hi.
Troy Bollinger,
Nay.
Karen Morey,
Aye.
Steve Williams,
Aye.
Joey Knopf,
Aye.
and Ken, and I apologize if I mispronounce your last name. Pardon?
You're muted, Ken.
Okay, Worcester. I vote aye.
Motion pass.
Okay, so we will move to item number 1, approval of the minutes. Any, oh, Brent, is this, did I miss you from before, or is this for
Nope.
the minutes?
I will lower my hand. You're good.
Okay. Okay, so approval of minutes, item number 1 from our December 2nd meeting. You've all had a chance, an opportunity to review those. Any discussion or motion? No discussion. Do we have a motion?
I have a motion to pass the minutes as they are.
Do we have a second?
Second,
So that was Brent with the motion to approve the minutes as written, and Tim with the second. Justin, you want to poll?
Karen Maury,
Aye.
Troy Bullinger,
Aye.
Tim West,
aye.
Brent Haverkamp,
Aye.
Steve Williams,
Aye.
Joey Knopf,
Aye.
and Ken Worcester.
I'll abstain.
Motion passed.
So that was okay, never mind, we're good. Okay, I got distracted there. So we're good. 1A then. And just for the record, it was moved from number 6, and the motion also was to rename it, and I think that needs to be clear, so I appreciate that. Not just nomination, but rather election of chair and vice chair, moved up to then 1A. So just to give some, I guess, overview of how this portion works for everybody, whether new or not. We have a chair and a vice chair. Each of them serve from January to January.
No.
Hang on, Karen. I got the floor.
Sorry.
Each of them serve from January to January. So they would take office at this meeting right now upon the vote of these 2 positions, and then the vote would happen again next January. So they would take for 1 year. And then the chair's responsibility, actually both chair and vice chair meet with Kendall and Justin each month before the meeting, usually about a week and a half, 2 Mondays before, to finalize the agenda and coordinate everything that's going to take place on there. And all agenda items from committee members go through the chair. I mean, when I say go through, can be communicated to, that's probably a better way to say that, communicated to the chair. And then the chair is the one that makes assignments for subcommittees and groups throughout the year, as well as conducts the meetings. In his or her absence, the vice chair assumes all those responsibilities. So as we do the nominations and elections, just understand that's what this individual will do going forward. We currently have 7 members here present. All 7 members are eligible for either the chair or vice chair. There is no requirement to be here a certain amount of time or anything like that. So everybody is eligible. And so what we do first is we take nominations for the chair. And then once nominations are complete, we will vote by voice. So visible to everybody in public as to that position. And then that chair will take the reins and elect and run the same process for the vice chair, and then continue the meeting. Any questions on that process or the duties or responsibilities before we open nominations? Okay. So I will open the floor for nominations for chair. Brent.
I would like to nominate Troy Bollinger for another year as chair of PrAC. I feel that Troy has done an outstanding job for leading this committee and keeping it on track and on course. And I am nominating Troy for the position of chair.
Thank you, Brent, and I accept. Any other nomination? Oh, Tim.
I nominate Karen Maury to take the president, the chair of this committee.
And Karen accepts.
Any others? Okay, Brent, I assume you meant to take your hand down, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I don't miss anybody. So Justin, typically how we do this is you can do it in any order you choose. We poll everybody for each nominee. And based on the numbers here, we've got 7 of us, so each one holds its own vote, and we vote, and it's going to be clear, you're going to get a 4, you're going to get a 3. If the first nominee gets 4 votes, then I believe, my understanding is by process, we still need to conduct the second one. Tell me if I'm wrong there, but I thought we had to do that. Maybe we don't, and we can just skip that. But nonetheless, if the first doesn't pass, then we move on to the second. So Justin, I'm gonna leave it up to you to pick whatever order you want and conduct that by open voice vote.
Okay, I'll start with Karen. So all in favor of Karen being the new chair of PrAC, please.
Will you poll everybody just like you do on a motion?
Motion? Yeah, absolutely. Troy Bollinger,
Nay.
Tim West,
Tim's frozen.
Tim is frozen. Oh, I'll come back. Brent Haverkamp,
Karen, I love you, but I'm gonna say nay.
Steve Williams,
This is a challenging thing for me since I know neither of the 2 candidates that well. It makes it a real, but I hate abstaining. I worked on a lot of committees and I hated people abstaining. So I'm going to say nay at this point in time.
okay. Joey Knopf,
Yeah, I have to echo what Steve said. It's tough to vote for one or the other when I'm not very familiar with them, but just based on the job that Troy's done in the few minutes that I've seen, I'll vote nay.
okay, and Ken,
I'm kind of in the same boat. So I'll just echo Steve and Joey. Go nay.
okay. And then sorry, I apologize for my question here, but do I ask Karen as well, or is
Yes.
she not? Yes,
You-
okay.
Yes.
Yes, you can ask Karen who will vote for herself.
Okay, I just didn't know if I could or not.
Yes.
So, all right, and then now votes for Troy. We'll start with Ken.
Aye.
Joey,
Also, aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Brent,
Aye for Troy.
Tim,
No, you have to stop anyway because Troy's reached the tipping point.
okay.
But we go ahead and put the votes on record.
All right.
And Troy,
Yes.
Karen,
I've lost track of who we're voting for what.
we're voting for Troy for chair.
No,
And then Tim, you were frozen when I did Karen's vote.
Yeah, I voted for her. Yes.
Okay. So based off the vote, it is Troy won with a 5-2 vote.
Thank you, Justin. We will now open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Tim West as vice chair. This is Karen.
Oh,
Karen nominates Tim. Brent, you have your hand up. I'm sorry,
No.
hang on, I'm too quick. Tim, accept or decline that nomination?
sure, I'll accept.
Okay, thank you. Brent,
I nominate Karen. Karen Maury.
Karen, do you accept or decline the nomination?
I will accept Brent's nomination.
Any other nominations for vice chair? We have Tim and Karen right now. I see none. Justin, in the same manner, will you poll the committee?
Yes, and we'll start with Tim. So Karen,
Aye.
Troy,
Aye.
Tim,
He's frozen again.
he's frozen. Okay. Brent,
Nay.
Steve,
Aye.
Joey,
Aye.
and Ken.
Nay.
And we go back to Tim. He's unfrozen now.
Tim, do you vote for yourself?
Actually, I wanted to nominate Brent for assistant chair.
Well, we closed nominations before you froze. So we're now voting, and the vote was first for you with a yay or nay.
Okay. How many votes do I have?
One.
Good boy.
And he froze again. So what is without Tim, what is our vote right now?
It's at 4.
Okay. So I recommend we move forward, given that his vote will not change the outcome. And if he jumps back on here, of course, we certainly want his vote on record.
Okay. And then we'll move to Karen, and we'll start with Ken.
Aye.
Was that yay?
Yes.
Joey,
Nay.
Steve,
I think I screwed up my last one because I thought we were voting for Karen the first time.
oh.
I would, I'll change my vote. I wanted to vote for Karen as an aye.
Okay. Brent,
100% yes.
is Tim back?
Tim is back. Let's get both of his votes while we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Tim, this is for both you and Karen.
Right? So what's the vote for?
We'll start with you. Do you vote for yourself?
Do I vote for myself? Yes.
Okay. And then do you vote for Karen?
For assistant chair?
Yes.
In fact, if I know I was voting against Karen, I'd say no for myself and yes for Karen.
Okay. All right, Troy?
For Karen, right?
Yes, for Karen.
Okay, good. Nay.
And Karen.
Karen, are you on mute?
Oh, there we go. I'm looking at Brent, asking if I'm unmuted. I'll vote for me forever, so hey. Thanks, dude.
Okay, so Justin, I think we might have some clarity we need here. So let's just be sure. What do you have for a count for each person?
So for Tim, I have 3. And Karen, I
3.
have,
Go ahead, 3 in favor
yeah, of Tim,
and 4 opposed.
for Tim,
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Now, Karen.
which is 4 and then 3.
Okay, now aside from that, what did you have Steve for Tim, just for the record?
I removed Steve's vote from Tim and moved it to Karen.
Okay, so you put it down as nay for Tim.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure you got clear. Steve, is that what you wanted?
Yes, that's what I wanted.
Okay, so our vice chair, if I'm understanding what you just told me, Justin, is Karen Morey as vice chair for the year 2022.
That would be correct.
Okay. Any questions? Because I know there's a little confusion on that. Any questions on vote? Everyone feel they got their vote counted properly and accurately?
Yep, Troy, 2022, we are a team, dude.
All right, make it work.
And we'll see how that goes.
It'll go great. It will go wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to open up for public comment. The only one I know is Jerry Herman. And Kendall, before we give Jerry time, is there anybody else after him, or is this it for public?
It's just Jerry.
Okay, Jerry, you got a few minutes. Go for it.
We have how many minutes?
You got 5.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, first of all, thank you for watching Democracy in Action. This is exciting to see you guys going to work in 2022. Okay, I want to just say hello to Ken Wooster, and Ken Warner too. Is still in West Lynn, filling Ken Wooster's shoes. You've got a wonderful individual here that will help you figure out how to fund your parks. He's so good at building community support. You'll be very impressed. I didn't know you were on the committee. Thank you. I was a founding member of the Natural Resource Committee way back when. Was a member of that for about 8 years. And in 2014, I learned about funding that Gladstone had been able to receive. I actually went to see Ken over in West Lynn and talked to them about the idea of mitigation funding for their natural resource areas that they might have within their park system, so forth. Gladstone prevailed and basically has gotten over 10 million in improvements, including a brand new dock from the Marine Board, which the Marine Board would do if the Marine Board thought there was a way to get access to the dock because it was the former dock, or a new dock location because it was all silted in. Because professionals had been involved with the city of Gladstone in their mitigation funding for habitat enhancement and all that, the result was there was no question. The dredging permit was issued. Now, what do you think about that, Ken? I know what you went through in West Lynn. It was very hard to get dredging permits, but because natural resource specialists outside the city, nothing against the city of Gladstone, but outside the city, negotiated the terms, things happened. I'm here to talk to you, and I want to come back in February with Kendall's blessing, tell you more about there's activities that can benefit Clackama Park and any other riverside areas that you have. You have the Clackamas and the Willamette bounding about 4 lineal miles all the way from the upper part of the Clackamas, which is 82nd Street Bridge down to its mouth, and then up to at least the at least the old Highway 43 bridge, the Arch Bridge. All those areas have potential suitability for funding, and you're embracing a process now of your master plan. I know Mr. Lango and his group, they're very good. And if the configuration of the design can include things that will attract benefits for both people and wildlife, I said those two together, people and wildlife, outdoor recreation and wildlife, there's a lot of funding that could help you implement your master plan at Clackama Park, because you have 2 rivers that bound it. Tremendous opportunities. Down in Milwaukee, Mayor Gamba and his group down there with Kellogg Lake, which if you drive through Milwaukee, you'll see Milwaukee's Kellogg Lake is frankly heavily silted in. That is undergoing a total transformation with mitigation funding. They have some things they need to work out with ODOT as the highway passes over it. They're in the queue now for mitigation funding. How does this work? In a nutshell, professionals come alongside the design team of Mr. Lango and company, and I'd be glad to help too, just as a volunteer, give the parameters that would help to track the mitigation funding, which comes from other people that had to solve their problems. For instance, in Portland Harbor, lots of activities occurred below the Broadway Bridge all the way to Columbia. People in that area are a part of a Superfund site that had to pay into a fund. That fund is good to help them clean up their sites, but if they cleaned up their sites so much they can't use them anymore, cleaning up is important, but revegetating them 100% to wildlife habitat may not allow them to conduct their industrial activities. Hopefully both could happen, but they're willing to see monies go upstream all the way to Willamette Falls.
Jerry, 1 minute.
So thank you very much. I appreciate that. So in a nutshell, I'd like to come back and talk to you in February if Kendall has time on the agenda, and give you more parameters for how this could work, because it's happening in Clackamas Cove now, finally, and it could happen for your park system. Never think this habitat enhancement money, mitigation money, is strictly to build things just for fish and wildlife. It's also for outdoor recreation purposes too. So that's my message. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry, very much.
You're welcome.
Now, moving on to presentations. First, we're going to hear from Lango Hansen about the Clackama Park master plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Kurt and Brian.
Great. Well, thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on the Clackama Park master plan. Brian Martin from our office, who's at the base of Mount Hood, should be dressing a little bit warmer, but he has actually been very much involved in this process as well. I wanted to let you know that for those of you that aren't familiar with our firm, we've actually have a long history of working on parks and open spaces in Oregon City. Our very first park was actually back in 2004, Wesley Lynn Park. And over the years, we've been very fortunate to work on a number of parks and open spaces. In fact, we also worked on the John Storm Park plans. And then over on the Cove side, we did a Clackamas Trail plan as well. So we have a bookended Clackama Park, and over the years visited it many times. We are just now at the very beginning of the process. Brian and I have been reviewing a lot of the material, and actually there's quite a lot of material that has been produced over the years, including a number of presentations, both before the City Commission and also this group, PRAC. Particularly in 2019, there were a number of discussions on Clackama Park, primarily focusing around the boat ramp, the boat launch, potential new locations, as well as the RV park and where it might be either remain where it is or also relocated. Out of that came a master plan document. And I think it was the end of October of 2019 that was presented, and there were comments related to that. And this was right pre-COVID. There were a couple things that came out of that last meeting, and it was both a PRAC and City Commission meeting. And I think one of the main things was to really increase the outreach. To a certain extent, some of the issues that were being discussed amongst the city, the commission, and PRAC really hadn't been, I think, either deliberated or thought of in terms of a broader public outreach. And so I think that was one thing that PRAC and the City Commission were really interested in doing. Right after that, COVID came our way. And so I think some of those issues and outreach were put on hold. And so we were brought in towards the end of December to really, I think, create a much more robust and thoughtful public process. There was one comment that was made at, I think was the City Commission or maybe PRAC Commission meeting, that some of the decisions that were being made was the tail wagging the dog. And I think things were so focused down to some of these individual issues that really the broader context of this really important regional park, how it fits into your other park systems, and really a more holistic approach needed to be worked through with the public engaged into that. So what we've been doing is we've been talking with Kendall, Denise, John, Justin, as well as the public outreach manager, Kirsten Brown, about developing a public process as we move forward with this project. So we're in the early stages of that. We've conducted some stakeholder interviews with the mayor, the economic development director, some city commissioners, and we definitely want to hear your thoughts tonight. And that's an ongoing process. We appreciate Mr. Herman and a lot of the history that he's brought to the site. So we'll continue that outreach. We're also in the middle of developing a survey. We know just as the pandemic still is running its course, it's important for us to get the word out and to be able to engage the boating community, the general public, park users. So we're in the midst of developing kind of a broader survey. We'll also, though, have a public workshop or a public meeting. So we're kind of working through that and the best way to get through that process. As with any master plan, we'll be looking at comments that we received at the very beginning. We don't have any preconceived ideas on what components of this master plan will be. So we'll be listening over the next month. And then we'll be developing 3 different concepts, and we'll be bringing those back to PRAC for review, for input. We'll be taking those out to the broader community, and then we'll be narrowing those down to a single master plan. Certainly some of the things that Mr. Herman talked about kind of natural resources, mitigation, looking at different funding sources, all of those things will be included in this final master plan. I think what would be helpful for us, if there is a discussion item that comes out of this, is that we would be interested in any goals or vision that you have for Clackama Park, things that you think we should consider as we kind of embark on this kind of broader outreach, or any specific questions that you may have.
Any questions? Comments? Steve, please.
Thank you. Two questions. You mentioned the 2014 effort at the master plan. This is probably my ignorance. Where might I be able to find a copy of that? Maybe I have it here and I don't know it, but where can I find a copy of that 2014 effort?
Yes, and let me say that there were, if I said 2014, I misspoke. It was 2019. So it was several years ago that a master plan document was done. And I guess Kendall and Justin, I probably refer that to you.
Yeah, we can get that out to everyone.
Sounds like that would be a helpful place to start, at least for new folks like myself. Some of the others may know.
Yeah.
Just, Mr. Chair, can I ask one more question?
Yes, please do.
A little bit more about the key stakeholder interview process that you mentioned there. You've gotten it started. It sounds like most of the key stakeholders in this approach have been most of the local folks who are directly involved in management and approach to Clackama Park and things like that. There's that whole other piece of the public, which I guess you're going to try and get most of that input through some of the direct public meetings, or you're reaching out. I see we have a chart here that shows us that you've got direct meetings with some of the other state and federal agencies as well. We'll have something they want to add, I'm sure. But how about the general public? How about that? I call him the I call him the short, fat guy on the boat that goes fishing down there. Where does he get involved?
Yeah, great question, because we are as you see as part of that chart, we'll be reaching out to the Oregon State Marine Board, as well as some of the other federal agencies. So I think we have a twofold approach to that. One is we will be holding a public meeting. So we'll be advertising. We haven't set a date yet, but that will probably be sometime in the latter part of February. And so there will be a mass invite for that. We'll be putting out flyers and talking to Sportscraft Landing, some of the other perhaps fish and tackle shops, just in terms of targeting that specific community. But in addition to the public workshop, because you know, a lot of people may not feel comfortable coming to it, or not a lot of people are public speakers. So I think the other part is just as important, is that we are going to be looking at doing a survey. And this then may be posted on the city's website. We're still kind of figuring out the best way to do that. So people can, at their leisure, fill out a questionnaire that gives us the input that we need in order to make educated decisions.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So
Tim, please.
certainly, Kurt, you have ideas about the concept plan. You have probably a pretty good idea of what you're going to put in the park and where things should go. It's not going to be a plan designed by the public. And I guess my biggest concern for the whole park is there going to be a boat launch? And I guess your discussions with the Marine Board and the ODFW would include relocating the current one.
Yeah, the existing one does not function. And I think back in 2019, there were discussions at length about the boat launch, whether where it should go in the park, if it should go in the park. But I think at that time, there wasn't a lot of outreach to the community to kind of hear what their thoughts are. And, you know, in the end, I think it's important because it is a community resource that everyone becomes vested in it, and being able to hear everyone's opinion about the amount of open space that they'd like to see. You know, thoughts on the RV park, the boat launch as well, the horseshoe pits. So there's a lot that goes into this park. And so we feel that whatever design we do kind of needs to be grounded in that process before we put, you know, pencil to paper.
Thank you, Tim, and then Kurt for your response. Any other questions or comments for Kurt? Ken, please. You're muted. There you go.
Yeah. So the one thing that I think that has been kind of surprising to me after the docks and everything kind of went away from the boat ramp is that there's kind of a new use of that area for wake surfing and paddleboard surfing on that one rapid that's just below the ramp. And so I just hope that, you know, and I doubt that those guys are the type that are going to be able to notice and see that there's an opportunity to comment. And so I don't know. I just kind of want to speak for the folks that I'm pretty sure won't show up. But it's just been fun to just go down and watch those guys and just see what, you know, just see a whole thing that I never would have thought of. So try to stay current with trends, but also, you know, acknowledging that there's all kinds of benefits that actually came out of pulling that ramp out of there.
Great. That's a very good comment. Yeah. And I think trying to reach a whole range of constituents would be really important.
And Ken, we do have their contacts. They have already reached out to me directly. So we will be reaching out to them and getting them involved in the process.
Sweet. Thank you.
Brent, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Ken said. I mean, if there's like a whole new use for the park area, I think that that's important to acknowledge and get those people involved with the future planning of this area. So thank you for saying that, Ken. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Brent. Any other comments, questions for Kurt? Then in closing with that, I do have some thoughts I'd like to share. I want to echo as well what Ken said. I will say, just to add a little context, we have had some of those discussions as we've done joint work sessions with City Commission. It's probably been over a year, maybe even actually over 2 years now that I think about it. So we definitely, I'm not suggesting that's sufficient. It's not, but it is something that's been thought of. You know, when that park was designed, it was for boats and horseshoe and national horseshoe tournaments. That's why you got 50 pits, right? Well, in 2022, it's not just boats and it's not just horseshoes, right? So clearly we need to do something different, and the situation with the river and how it's flowing is, as we all know, different and potentially dangerous in the situation it's in, which is why we're even having to reconsider if we keep it or if we turn it or if we move it or whatever we do. And I think you're 100% right with the kayakers and paddle boards and everything that goes in there. We've got to find a way to make it work for everybody. And I will say that there has been, I have heard a lot of discussion from different members of our community with various opinions. I can't tell you that I have heard any sort of consensus on what to do. Some say absolutely don't get rid of that boat ramp. It's part of the park. It's always been part of the park. Others say get rid of it because we have Gladstone and we have Sportcraft. You know, so some people say keep it, some say move it, some say get rid of it. So I think all of those need to be considered, need to be listened to. Kurt, something for you, and is one of the biggest complaints, I think, just in parks, as far as bringing new parks on board and other things in the city. And I think the master plan of a park would, I mean, it's essentially going to be a new park when we're all done. So kind of falls in those lines. The biggest complaint is there's not enough time, right? There's not enough notice for the public. So I would suggest if we're going to have a meeting or public input opportunity at the end of February, that notice should go out next week. People should have 30 days, 45 days to do it. I think we need to put, you know, it's common that for zoning and permitting, you have a public notice at the site. So anyone in the area, anyone walking by has an opportunity to come to a city commission meeting and testify at a particular hearing. A little different process here, but I think the same notification needs to happen. Let's put posters in that park right by that boat ramp for the people that go there, know that there's that opportunity. In addition to the email list that Kendall has, in addition to social media. And then as a reminder to all of us as committee members, we are advocates for the community to the city staff. So it is okay and encouraged that when these notifications are made, we actually go out and make the announcement personally. I mean, once it's made public, we can share that. Share it to your personal social media pages, share it to the community groups that has, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people in it in the Oregon City area. And let's just flood this and give people plenty of opportunity to share. You know, it's hard to prioritize what's most important in a park, because if you play basketball, the basketball courts are most important. If you boat, then the boat ramp is most important. But I would say the most important part of this is getting community involvement. That, to me, my opinion, that is more important than what we put in the park and how we organize it, is listening to our people who are going to be living here for decades. Because we can build the most beautiful park in the world, but if nobody likes it, nobody goes there, we've failed. So that's my 2 cents, and I appreciate you coming to share that with us, Kurt.
I just want to say that I echo everything that you've said. In fact, that's exactly the conversation that Kendall and I and other team members had just earlier this week, was that the most important part of this, one of the most important parts, is just having it be grounded in a very thorough and open and interactive public process. So I appreciate those words.
And if it means delaying the meeting or delaying implementation, I'm all for that. If the upside to that is more public input, and let's finish those conversations as long as people want to provide the input. Karen, a couple comments or questions? You're muted. There you go.
Just say thank you. I couldn't see that. Kurt, just personal experience. I've launched boats from Mildred Bar, Sportcraft, and Clackama. Clackama I can do without. So I am looking forward to public input on the different launches that we have available, because I'm not sure Clackama is one of our priorities, and it's an expensive priority. And
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Kurt? Steve, please.
Yes, and Karen, I certainly hear, I haven't been able to use Clackama in a long, long time. I think the one challenge that we're faced with here in this local area is that the availability of boat ramps is changing. And, you know, we don't know, we don't want to get into it, but we don't know where Sportcraft is going to be here shortly. And it's an awful small boat ramp to begin with. Meldon Bar has changed, and Cedar Oak is about the size of my backyard. So for this upper end of the river here, you know, given the boat ramp changes that have occurred even in the last 5 years, we're starting to run out of places to put boats. So that input from the public, there'll be lots of interest in that from a lot of different angles. And it sounded to me, I heard some awful good possibilities. You might be able to have your cake and eat it too down there, with some creative activities and creative thinking. So I look forward to being able to work with you guys on that.
Thank you. Yes.
Great, thank you, everybody. Before we let Kurt go, is there any other questions, comments? Want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. Okay, Kurt, thank you very much. Brian, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
So we're gonna hear about the trail proposal concept for the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council at Abernathy Creek from Tom Gaskell. Tom, it's for you.
Hey, hi all. Sorry, I'm going to turn that light some other way so that I'm not blinding you with it. There we go. Yeah, that's worse. All right. How about that? Does that
That'll
do
work.
that? Nah, that's even worse. All right, there we are. Hi, good to see you all again. My name is Tom Gaskell. I'm the executive director for the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council. And I'm excited to share our proposal with you tonight at the stage of concept for the Abernathy Creek Park Trail. So back in June, when I presented to you all, we had just received the community enhancement grant for 2 different project sites, one of them being Abernathy Creek Park, and the other one was the Environmental Learning Center up at the John Inskeep Environmental Learning Center up at Clackamas Community College. The proposal tonight is backed by quite a bit of work, and one of the people that I want to acknowledge he's here, is Derek Palmore. Derek is our AmeriCorps member. He's our our stewardship involvement coordinator. And Derek has been with us since September. Derek is part of Confluence AmeriCorps. And so he's serving an 11-month term. He'll be here through the end of July. And this is one of the projects that Derek is really taken a tremendous lead on and done some nice work. So I just want to acknowledge Derek. I'll be giving the presentation tonight, but a lot of the work that I'm presenting is work that Derek has been behind. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, if I may. I think that's what we had talked about, Justin, for me to do, but I don't see that I can.
You will in a minute here.
Okay.
They're gonna open up your access.
Okay, thanks, Troy. All right.
You should be good. Is it there?
Yep. All right. And I'm going to share that and then go to presentation mode. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Very good. Thanks. All right. So Abernathy Creek Park and this trail proposal, again, came through the efforts of developing a community enhancement grant and submitting that. And I want to note that this project really could not have happened if it hadn't been for my board suggesting, and Jerry Herman, who's also on the call, suggesting that we submit a community enhancement proposal for this idea. You can see in the upper, I guess, left-hand corner, many of our board members there. We held a public event back in November. It was a small event. It was not designed to be kind of large public involvement style event. What we were doing there was removing invasive species and preparing the area for planting of some natives. And Abernathy Creek Park for the Watershed Council is a place that's been very important for many years. And so a lot of the work that Derek has been focused on has been really trying to document some of the plantings that have been done and putting that into our GIS, and then also bringing some new volunteers on board with the council. And we've got a couple of now longer engagement volunteers that are helping us out on this project. So we're hoping to enter kind of a new phase with your support and approval of this trail concept. And I want to make sure we leave plenty of time at the end of this for your questions. So I'm going to move through these slides, not too quickly, but hopefully at the right pace. It's not letting me, there we go. All right. So the Abernathy Creek Park Trail proposal that we drafted was done really for with a couple of things in mind. One is that we know this is kind of a small, low intensity recreation opportunity for community members, but it's also within walking distance of downtown Oregon City and the Oregon Trail Museum. So it's really in quite an outstanding area in my mind for some foot traffic and some great wildlife observations actually, and also for highlighting Abernathy Creek, which is near and dear and important to our Watershed Council. I also want to point out, new since I last spoke with you, the council has leased an office on the corner of Abernathy and Washington, and the Kruger House. And so I now have an office there that I share with Derek and another AmeriCorps member that we were granted named Willow Michaels. And so it's really a nice situation for us because we can frequently visit the park and get to know the neighbors, and we've done that. We also can kind of keep an eye on things and hope to bring more volunteer effort into Abernathy Creek Park if the city wishes to help with upkeep and caring for it. We'd like in this proposal to address a variety of user abilities, and we think that's possible at this location. There is some steep terrain for certain all along the creek, and I'll highlight that later in the proposal. But there's also some nice flat areas because of the homes that were once there. And we believe we can develop a trail that has two components. One that is fully accessible for all abilities, and then one that's a little more challenging, but still pretty darn accessible. The views to Abernathy Creek are extremely important to us as we tell our story or share our stories of the Watershed Council's work in the Oregon City area, and also specifically in Abernathy Creek. And we're hoping that this is an initial phase, not that future phases of development would be extraordinarily more involved, but simply that they could enhance what we've done here and perhaps extend the trail further. So as a part of this project too, we have proposed plantings. We've been working with the Rivers of Life Center up at the Environmental Learning Center, and they've done some phenomenal work on trail management or trail maintenance, I should say, up there, and also some native plantings, which I just visited today. We will include native plantings as a part of this project, both to enhance wildlife habitat in the area, but also to give opportunity for interpretation. And so Derek, in this graphic that he's put together, has highlighted specimen gardens. Those specimen gardens may or may not be labeled. We've worked pretty closely with John Waverly to try and understand the realities of public park management and maintenance of any kind of structures. And we know that vandalism, unfortunately, is something that we do have to consider. But these would be, the plantings themselves would be placed in such a way both to allow us to highlight the native species, but also to give kind of a path of opportunity to learning maybe, 5 new native plants, native shrubs or native trees, which be a pretty low-key interpretation. We're not proposing at this stage any kind of major interpretive signs or interpretive experience. In terms of the American Disabilities Act and our compliance with that, what we're proposing here is to actually have the first section of the trail be fully compliant with ADA standards, current ADA standards, which means that we'll need to meet slope gradient and surface requirements and width requirements. And we want to make sure that the specimen garden experience is not simply relegated to anybody who has to go the whole way on the trail, but that we have it at different parts of the trail and including the ADA section. So one of the areas that I don't know, can you see my cursor here? You see it near the sequoia?
Yes.
The label? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So I just want to start by saying it up here at the edge of the parking lot is where we thought it would make logical sense to have the entry to the ADA trail. We actually went out and placed some flagging with Jonathan's permission to give us a tentative trail pathway. And then subsequent to that, have had some conversation with the neighbors adjacent to the park. One neighbor in particular expressed, again, I'm gonna try and get my cursor back here, some concern about this loop right here. And the reason that this loop was here was to actually give people their first visual access. You can't quite see it off screen, but their first visual access to Abernathy Creek. We've since learned the neighbor has some concerns that this also gives visual access to her yard. And that's easily remedied. So what we can do is work in this direction instead to connect the trail up here and really drop out this loop. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Is we are very interested. Watershed councils are about stakeholder engagement. They are about involvement. And we are very interested in the community being involved in this process of understanding, where we're putting the trail and why, or where we would like to put the trail and why. So had conversation with that landowner today, and I think we've got a more agreeable pathway that we will chart out with our flags following your comments at this meeting. And then I just wanted to point out there are certain features of this park. This great big sequoia is actually quite close to the trail, very visible. Of course, it's a huge tree. I'm not sure how tall it is, but I used just a simple free plant ID app and was able to pull in these 2 images here using PlantNet. And those are the kinds of things that we would like guests, visitors to this park to be able to know are available and to do as they experience the park. So the overlook area that we're talking about here, if you can see in this area, Derek has given us kind of a texture that should represent crushed granite with a compacted overlay of crusher fines that creates a very smooth surface that is easily covered by someone who might be in a wheelchair. We can also put in other amenities to this portion of the trail to make sure it's fully ADA accessible. Where it transitions right here, it starts to get steeper. And as it does, it's very difficult to meet the grade requirements of full ADA accessibility. So we wanted to keep the trail alongside Abernathy Creek so that you'd still get some views in here. And then down here, we made a little lobe, and that's what's pictured in this photo here. And that lobe is proposed to be another little landing. Our initial proposal was for bark chips in here that would be trenched 4 to 6 inches down into the soil. And then they would be refreshed periodically through volunteer work. And again, I've had conversations with John about this and recognize that limited maintenance budgets and extensive maintenance in parks makes for difficult times. And so we certainly don't want to try and saddle the parks staff with something that is not easy to maintain. So that's open to discussion, of course. But this overlook down here with this view is important. And it's important just to the left of this photo. It may be kind of small for you to see, but there is a creek that enters into Abernathy, and it's variously called Stadium Creek or High School Creek. It's a culverted creek, and it runs mostly under the city streets of Oregon City. And in fact, I learned from Jerry that part of it runs through a bedrock culvert, which is an interesting concept. But Stadium Creek is important for us for a couple of reasons. One is it tells the urban story of creeks, and it also connects up with Abernathy Creek. And so we can talk about water quality there. So trail placement considerations. I, in my short tenure with the Watershed Council, have been fascinated, and I've visited Abernathy Creek at this park. Oh, I can't even count the times, probably 50 or more. And I've been watching it from its lowest level down here in the summer of 2021. This is pre any rain that we would see to this is here in the winter. This was in December that I took this photograph, and it's a very, if it's not exactly the same location, it's very, very close. At this point, Stadium Creek is fully underwater. That culvert is underneath the water. And I took these photos and included them in here because I wanted you to know that when we placed this trail, we were very sensitive to the fact that Abernathy Creek is a flashy creek. It floods. That is why the park is there. And we recognize that. And so we want to make sure that our trail acknowledges that and keeps people very safe and distant from the creek with views to the creek. All right. And then finally, we're calling this Trails End at this point, although not trying to necessarily play on the Oregon Trail and Trails End, but just because as the trail continues on, the final leg will actually come along the edge of the mowed meadow, and we would like to do some plantings in there to provide a little bit of shelter actually from that meadow, a screening, so that guests feel a little bit more secluded. Not much, but they just feel like, hey, I'm still on the trail, not walking the edge of the meadow. And then it drops down to this little turnaround area in here. And this was purposefully created with space enough that you could have a small group of, say, 10 to 15 people that you could talk to all at the same time. And this is at a bend in the creek. This is an area where you're looking right across to a very steep bank and some urban environments. The veterinary clinic is just right over here. But we wanted to be able to talk about what happens downstream and what happens upstream at this location, and it's got good views for that. So this area ultimately would bring us to the edge of the meadow again. And at the edge of the meadow, so our trail is kind of an out and back trail at this point. And the reason for that is really that we wanted to make sure that, sorry, I just moved on from my presentation. So I'm going to hit escape here and get back to where I can see you all. So I really wanted to make sure as we finished out this part of the trail, that there was an opportunity maybe to continue the trail on, but some of the habitat along the edge of that trail and some of the terrain is very, very steep. And so we didn't want to put visitors in a position where they might be tempted to start to go over that bank down to that next terrace, which is actually well within the floodplain and, is also a pretty heavily native planted area for habitat that we don't necessarily want visitors to go through. So that's the end of my formal presentation. And Troy, I don't know how you want to handle questions. And I
Well,
can put the presentation back up if there are questions about my slides.
we probably will, and then we'll let them direct you as to what they're asking about. Brent, will you go first, please?
You bet. Tom, keep up the good work. I love the work that you and your group do. I remember your last presentation that you presented, and I love it. And I think it's very necessary for the community of Oregon City.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions, maybe 4. But my first question is, how long is this trail that you're proposing?
It's about 800 feet, and I'm looking at Derek here. Is that correct?
It ends up being about 650.
Okay. Yeah. When you first said that there was a trail along Abernathy Creek, I got really excited. I was hoping that it would be a little bit longer. I was wondering if it could be longer, but I imagine that there's probably land use issues or.
Well, here's what I would say. The extent of this trail, if we were to continue this trail all the way around the park, we would still really have a pretty limited trail, and it starts to get into private property on either end of it. I will say there are many trails that don't necessarily have all contiguous sections. And so I think there's an interesting and bigger conversation maybe to have about the parks master plan and how you might add some segments to a trail, because I also like hiking along creeks and rivers, very enjoyable.
Okay. And then I love the overlook. I love that idea. One of the things, I've been up to the new Newell Creek, the Metro Park up there on Newell Creek. And one of the things that I like is they point out wildlife you might see. And I was wondering if there might be signs on the overlook that will show people of the types of wildlife they might see in the creek or around in the area.
I would absolutely love to do that. I can tell you that my background in working as an interpreter and an environmental educator, I've developed many different types of signs, interpretive signs. It's very gratifying when people really enjoy the experience of that signage, and it can be done cheaply, but I think when it's done well, it takes some resources, and I'm not sure right now that we have that in this grant. But I am hopeful that we may be able to, so that would be part of my phase 2 proposal. If, were the parks interested. The other thing that I just have to say is one of the most disheartening things is watching these interpretive signs that you worked very hard to create either be defaced or stolen or damaged. And so it's a fine balance between the investment and losing out. So I hope, maybe what we can do is at least test use once this trail is established and see what kind of proposal we could put in there.
And I would support that. Absolutely. Great point. Last question. You mentioned that this was ADA compliant, but I was a little bit concerned about the use of bark chips. How are bark chips ADA compliant with somebody in a wheelchair?
So thank you for asking that question. I want to be very clear. The entire trail is not ADA compliant, and we know that. What we are attempting here is to make the first section of the trail ADA compliant, and then the remainder, because of slope issues principally, it would be very challenging to make it ADA compliant. That said, one of the things that I bring from previous trail work is that you want to look for like experience, so that somebody who has mobility impairments or any kind of impairment that doesn't allow them to have the full trail experience is still getting an equivalent experience through what you have offered with your portion of the trail that's ADA compliant. And so that's why there's a turnaround there and an overlook on the ADA section. And there's also really views of the creek. And so we can tell the story to really any user at several points in the trail. That's kind of the goal.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
You bet. And trail surface is still in discussion because we need to cost out whether John has expressed an interest in crushed granite potentially for the whole trail. So if we can cost it out, it does give a very different experience than walking on wood chips, but wood chips also decompose. So there are trade-offs.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Brent, thank you. Tim?
Thank you. Hey, Tom, you and Derek, you guys have done a great job in not only finding a little gem in Oregon City, but coming up with a plan to make it work for everybody here. I think it's a good start. I have a few questions. One is, how do you access this? And is there parking? I see you have John Adams Street right there, but if you expect more than 1 or 2 cars there, I'm sure you've inundated that street. So where does a person park to go ahead and get to this?
Yeah, so I know you can park 3 because I've had at least 3 cars there before. And we did have a work crew. Well, the volunteers you saw in that photo, several of them parked. I know that this is a small park with limited parking. And the good part is that just across Abernathy Road is the Oregon Trail Museum, and there's a very large parking lot over there. So it is possible if we knew that we were doing a planned activity and we had lots of people coming, we would actually direct them. I would work with the Oregon Trail Museum to make sure that we could park vehicles there and have people walk. The other possibility, I guess, is that we recognize that this park is not ideal for having large groups at all. I think that actually is something that your parks master plan will have to think about, because it really is, you get a few people parked at a park and you can take up all those spaces, and you don't want to turn the park into a parking lot either, just so that you've got a lot of parking spaces and people wonder what they're coming to see.
Sure. Have you worked with the Abernathy Center? Because they have a wedding event center just yards away from this.
Yeah, I do know Dan Fowler. I mean, I've interacted with him a bit, and Dan owns the building that we rent from or lease from for our office. I think collaboration with community partners is going to be key when we do any kind of larger activity here. But my hope is that we won't overwhelm the people who live along this street, but we will create a very nice community asset. And I think you can actually walk, I know you can, from downtown Oregon City, from corner 14, and I walk down there to get my lunch. And, I hope it will encourage people, as much as this is a nice nature trail, walking along the street is a great way to get there. So they can find parking in other spots too. But yes, point taken.
All right, one last question, and that is, this is a hidden gem, and you are 10 yards away from Washington Street. But the thing is, in between Washington Street and this new park is invasive. What are they, hyacinth or I don't know what they are. There are vines crawling up dead trees there. Is there any plans to go ahead and clean that up so people could even see this park?
So yes, absolutely. I'm surprised actually that Doug Neely, our chair, didn't show up this evening, but Doug has been fastidiously attacking clematis and other invasives in this park since I think the Watershed Council was founded. It's a steep slope area. There's a beautiful big cottonwood just the other side of the bridge there on Washington Street that is one of the tallest trees that you can see around in that part of Oregon City, and it is becoming overwhelmed with clematis. It's my hope that our Watershed Council and the community can come out and really give it some trouble and try to knock the clematis back, because you're right, it is taken over, and we're fighting it wherever we can.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Tim, thank you. Ken?
Yeah, how steep is that area when you kind of transition from the ADA part of the path down?
Yeah, so
Flat.
the ADA portion of the path needs to be 3% or less in slope. It starts to get into kind of the 5 to 10% slope arena. And what we tried to do with our flagging, which I didn't feel like it made sense to give you slide by slide with the flags, because it wouldn't have made a lot of sense on the picture. But what we tried to do there was put some meander into that trail so that we can keep that slope in that sort of 5 to 10% category. Nothing there is more than 10%, I would say. And if it is, we will adjust to make sure that we're not doing that.
And you know that you can go like put in landings every 50 feet or so to kind of help mellow that out so that it meets a certain level. I mean, it might not make it for everybody, but with those landings and grade reversals, you can, it still does, that qualifies as ADA on a trail.
Yeah, and I think when we get to that stage, so I would say we're close right now to where I would like to be. But I think we really have to get a clinometer out there and just start working real hard to make sure that we've got the appropriate switchbacks, meanders. And then it was actually in my mind when we put those 3 landings there, was to try and give people, not only to allow for switchbacks, but also to give people a resting spot.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the goal of the landings, is that the people will still use it if they have a place, so they're just not a free fall down the hill.
Yeah, I would say in general, I've walked this now with all of our board and volunteers a number of times, and I would say most people, I haven't heard anybody yet say this is not a pleasant experience, it's too steep, or and there's not a lot of huffing and puffing there. So it's a pretty short trail too.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Joey?
Yeah, thanks, Troy. Tim, I very much had the same question as you did about access in that area, because I agree, it looks like there's a pretty small window for traffic. And I was wondering, Tom, if you, in your conversations that you had with the neighbors and the kind of community in there, if any concerns were raised by them in terms of traffic and cars lining up on the streets.
Yeah, in my conversations thus far, traffic hasn't really been brought up so much. I think what has been brought up is, how would I describe it? Current use. So we know that, I know from just observations over the past few months, that there are some uses in there that are not very desirable for the people who live there. People are coming down, for example, I had to bring a bag of it had human waste in it. I brought it over to the Metro Hazardous Waste Center and they got rid of it for me. But it was, it was a big trash bag that was out at the picnic table there, and it was just trash strewn around, and then inside was human waste. Derek and I one day identified a stash of a needle, hypodermic needle, and it seemed like a kit. So I know that the neighbors are concerned about that. And one of my hopes for you would be that this park, that we would actually garner enough positive use that it would discourage some of that negative use. Now, that just means they will go somewhere else to do what they're doing. But overall, I would say there hasn't been that level of concern yet. Now, when I brought up today with this landowner the idea of potentially bringing a field trip of kids out to walk along the trail, she was not in favor of that. I can just say that parks and nature and children, those are important pieces to connect. And if we want anything to be taken care of in the future, we need to keep making that connection. But we can be sensitive. And I did talk to her about not, I would never want to invite a school bus or several school buses to come down that street. We would make other arrangements so that people could walk in. Yeah.
I had one more kind of question or observation. In terms of the layout of the trail and how open that area is, you had mentioned trying to work to keep people off of the slope and away from the creek. What kind of precautions can we take along those lines?
Sure. So, right now, I mean, I'll just be the first to acknowledge there's nothing keeping anybody from going right down to the creek. What I propose at that one landing that you saw where I mentioned, I highlighted the culverted stream that is coming in, and at that area, I've talked about maybe split rail cedar fence in a circular form, depending on how much we can afford here. I'd actually like to do that at the other corner as well. So these things kind of, they set an expectation. Now, right. I live across from a natural area, and I can tell you that just because there's a split rail cedar fence there does not mean that anybody
go off trail.
observes that, right? But I think in my strategies in working with trails in the past, if the trail is the attractive option, we can talk about even putting plantings in that are uncomfortable to push through. So high bush Oregon grape is not pleasant to push through. If we are thoughtful about our plantings, I think we can start to create that expectation. Here's the trail. This is the good experience, and there are always going to be people who will go off and they will go down to the creek. But I want to stay away from that.
Sure.
I do have a desire at some point to maybe look at a phase where if the parks were interested, having a small landing there to be able to do water quality sampling with youth. I've done that before. And again, those kinds of things, they need to be really thoughtfully planned. Just like you're going to be wrestling with Clackama Park and trying to think of the multitude of users there. If you come up with it, if you hit it right, it's something that pleases not everybody, but it'll get the majority of people excited and using that facility. But that's a later stage here.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see this trail and make use of it.
Well, hey, I also, I see there are a couple more questions, but I also want to make sure before I forget, March 5th, we have another public event there. And Derek is just putting that together now. And that is an opportunity for you all to come out, and I'll make sure you get invites if you would like to participate. And then we're also going to be working up at the Environmental Learning Center on April 9th. So I'll make sure that I get those invites to the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks.
Steve, looks like you're up.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate your presentation. Early this week, I went out and walked your trail along the flagging that you had there.
Okay.
You guys, the designers did a nice job of utilizing the topography there. It is not a, at least in my opinion, and I'm not a great big hiker, but it's not a difficult trail, even clear down to the end to work your way through. I share Tim's concerns about parking. I pulled down in there with my pickup and they were working on, so the power company was there and a few other things. And it's a small place.
It is.
So the utilization by students and others who I think would probably get a lot out of this, you'll have to make those accommodations, like you say, across the street or wherever.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying about the interpretive signage and the problem with vandalism and all of that. The opportunity there to with Abernathy Creek and some kind of interpretive kiosks or whatever that could describe what's in the creek. You got lamprey and coho and pretty unique, very unique situation to a small urban area like ours. I understand that interpretive signage, but I hope we can find some way to let people know, because it's one thing to walk the trail and look for the birds and look for the small mammals and look for those kinds of things. It's another to look at the creek and you don't see anything, but the interpretation of what's underneath the water is really an important piece of the puzzle. And it's the kind of thing that youth in particular get pretty interested in. So I hope there's a way to figure out how to keep the vandals away.
I do too. And I really appreciate your comment, because I worked for many, many years at a National Estuarine Research Reserve, and estuaries are a complicated place, and trying to tell that story, much of it is unseen. And so you have to have ways to try to get people to understand what's going on underneath that water. So I'm committed to trying to improve interpretation at this park. I just want to make sure I'm thoughtful to Kendall's team and all that work, because I don't want to make trouble for them.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions, or thoughts for Tom or Derek? If you have a question just for Derek, I'm sure you'd answer it too. Just a couple thoughts I have. I drive by that park often. I don't go in it very often though, because it is tucked back in there. With Doug Neely on this project with you, I'm a little surprised that signage wasn't at the top of his list, because anyone that knows Doug knows that signage is his big deal. He's been, prior to him being mayor, when he was mayor, he wanted signage. And so I'm a little surprised, although if the grant doesn't allow for it, then the grant doesn't allow. If it's at one of their rules or parameters, then we can't do that. But
no, I should be clear, there's no prohibition in terms of signage. It's just a matter of resources.
So what you decide to spend the money on, right?
Yeah, it's already budgeted, but yeah.
So, and I say that kind of in jest a little, just because I know Doug and I know that he's all about the signage. So, but I do think it would be good if as for starters of that is to have a better, more obvious sign at the entrance, because there are lots of people that don't know that it's there. I know that it's there, but even when I drive by, it honestly looks like it's a driveway next to the house. I believe there's the tree on the right with the corner, and then on the left, there's the house. It almost looks like it's a driveway or a blacktop area. So, and then again, that's probably more of a city function than it is your project, but I think that would be the first thing. And Mr. Abernathy, if I remember correctly, had a significant part in Oregon City and in Willamette Falls specifically, and with the currency, the first currency in Oregon came from Mr. Abernathy. So to your point, and maybe a suggestion that I would make is, as you know, it's very difficult to get buses in and out of there. There's not a big button hook on the end that allows them to turn around. It's very difficult. But what if there's a lot of groups, school groups, that already go to the interpretive center? They go there for the interpretation that's over there. They're going to park there. What if you just made the park more known to the interpretive center with the suggestion of part of that school's trip could be to leave their bus in the parking lot, walk down to Mr. Abernathy's park, talk a little bit about what Mr. Abernathy did, because it does tie into the Oregon Trail and Oregon history that they just learned at the Interpretive Center. And that would maybe bring more people without bringing more cars, for at least during the school day.
Yeah,
And it would make it,
absolutely.
available. We're talking at that point, people coming from outside of Oregon City and sometimes outside of Oregon that would be able to use that park, and they could just walk down the street because they're already a block away. So just the suggestion of maybe, then that's just a matter of letting schools know, letting the Interpretive Center know that they can make that suggestion to their patrons of, hey, there's also another opportunity while you're here.
Absolutely. Yeah, that strategy is one that I think makes perfect sense. And I have made the acquaintance of the director of the museum. The Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. I think I also know that field trips they benefit from having opportunities for the kids to get out and physically do some things. And one of the things that's really nice about Abernathy, I think, is that there is that open meadow space. And sometimes when you get kids to a space and you've done your interpretive part of the story, they need to physically do something. And so you can play some games out in that field. You can do some environmental education activities there. So it really is a nice, nice little setting. And I think I would hope that the neighborhood would recognize that any kind of field trip that comes through there, it's going to be very peripheral. It will ephemeral. Sorry, it will last for an hour, if that, and then they're gone. And so hopefully it doesn't make the neighbors too uncomfortable to see that.
Well, and I'll just direct my last comment here to Kendall, which involves this, but we've got First City Celebration in downtown Oregon City coming up. That's just been announced, and they have booths for vendors and artists and whatnot. And I know in the past at those type of events, sometimes the city would have a presence, and it may be appropriate for this either just parks or the city of Oregon City, however, to have a space down at First City Celebration that showcases this park, maybe showcases new parks that have just opened. The people, some pictures, some graphics, maybe something on the screen that says, here's, Tyrone S. Woods opened, DC Lotterette, all the parks that we've opened, and just kind of show and then talk about this plan as well. And so the city, the community members that are down there walking and seeing whatever the music and the artists have a chance to see what's also been coming. Now that's more of a parks or a city thing, but I think this Abernathy Creek project could be included in that to just let people know what's coming up, what's the new thing. And maybe this is too much in one setting or one, booth space, but maybe ideas for the Clackama master plan. People could walk in there and talk about that as well, or ask questions about it or something of that nature, just to get more interest. So just a thought, Kendall, if that's something the city or the Parks Department could do.
We participate in that every year.
I kind of thought they did. I just wasn't sure. It's been a while since we did that, so I didn't remember that far back.
May I ask when that event is held? Do you know the date, or at
I want to
least the
say it was
month?
June something. Let's go to Karen, and while she's saying what she wants to say, I'll look it up for you.
Thank you.
Because I've got it here. But Karen, go ahead.
Melissa, do you know? Melissa knows.
It's July 16th, I believe, this year.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, July 16th.
Thank you, Melissa.
I was making sure it was a Saturday.
All right, just from Karen and history, I still refer to that as John Adams Park. That's a little stub of John Adams. It is a tiny little piece of the Abernathy donation land claim. Directing people there as part of First City, I'm not sure is really what we need to do, but I have to say, that is my favorite place to go. It's a quiet place.
It's a
Um,
quiet place.
there was a question from Jim Nocita when he was a city commissioner and later about creating access from Washington Street. The parking lot by the veterinarian's office, building a bridge from there over to the property. Has anything been pursued on that?
I learned of that. Actually, Jerry was the one who shared that with me, and I think Dan Fowler has been a proponent of that as well. But I am not aware of any specific proposal there. The one thing I would say is watching Abernathy Creek perform at flood stage is impressive, and for such a small creek, it really kicks out a lot of water in a hurry. And I've watched some of the large wood jams moving along that creek in winter. And so whatever bridge proposal might be put in there should be very thoughtful of what is coming down the creek.
Well, and I have to say, I love my little quiet space, and I know how to find it. But
my goal is not to have it be anything but a very quiet, peaceful little space, just a beautiful space that is easier for people to access. But it's not my park, it's your park.
Thank you, Tom.
Any other comments or questions for Tom before we let him go?
Just one quick question. I think I missed it at the beginning. Where did the grant come from?
This is a grant through community enhancement funds from Metro, from the South Transfer Station tipping fees. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And I don't know if that grant fund source will be advertised or available again this year, but I certainly would, you've mentioned several ideas that I think we would be happy to pursue. If I can't speak for the council, all I can say is I think the council would be interested potentially in pursuing kind of a phase 2 opportunity here.
Tom, thank you. Derek, thank you for being with us and sharing all that with us tonight.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Time.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Hope we see you on March 5th.
Thank you, Tom.
Take care, and thank you all for your service for the community.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
So Christina, hope you're still warm down there hanging out at the elevator.
I'm good.
You still good?
I'm still good.
All right. Why don't you talk to us about OC 2040 comprehensive plan?
All right. Thank you, Chair Berlander. I am here to present an update on OC 2040, but before I start, can I see a hands raised of people who have participated in any of the public outreach over the last year and a half, be it a visioning work session, a summit, submitted a comment on the website, did a survey of OC 2040. I'm curious how many people on PrAC know about OC 2040 or take part in the public engagement so far. Okay. Some hands. I know Karen has. Karen's hand is up. I know that. Okay, well, so that's some of you, so I may provide a little bit of background for those who haven't been involved, and there's still time. And so I am going to start sharing my screen and kind of walking through. I have probably 15 slides, and it's really to give an overview of where we are and then how you can be involved as an individual member, but also how PrAC can be involved moving forward as we go from ideas and start moving through the funnel of any document creation till we get actual words on paper, and then how we all are going to now stare at the words on paper and everyone kind of provide their expertise. So I'm going to start my presentation in just one moment. So this is our update of OC 2040, our comprehensive plan. Some people ask, what is OC40 and what is a comprehensive plan? So all cities in Oregon and many cities across the United States have comprehensive plans. It really is the big picture guidance document for the city and the decision they make. And the comprehensive plan is implemented through the goals and policies, which is really what I'm here to talk to you about this evening. And it's really the first time in this process that we are seeing goals and policies put to paper. You interact with the comprehensive plan in your role as PRAC through your Parks and Rec master plans, as well as looking at the existing comprehensive plan. There is direction in our existing 2004 comprehensive plan about parks priorities and park decision making for the City Commission. And the last time we updated our comprehensive plan was 2004. And before that, we had a plan in 1980. So this is really the third iteration of Oregon City's comprehensive plan. In 2004, the comprehensive plan that is currently adopted and on our website, we look at goals and policies, and a lot of our goals and policies actually have implementation items that are policies. The comprehensive plan today is broken up into like 10 different chapters, and each chapter has a topic, and then it talks about background, and then goes into goals, policies, and more specific policies. And so what we've looked at in this version is we're trying to peel out some of the detail in the comprehensive plan that may be dated over time or not updated over time, and how to hone in on the big picture vision, goals, and policies, and then have an implementation action plan with kind of actual work projects that or decision-making items that can implement these larger goals and policies. So the group that has been involved in the creation of this new comprehensive plan is a project advisory team made up of people with, I think there's over 40 people that have been assigned to look at the comprehensive plan that have background in lots of different areas. And one thing I'm really excited about, people that have not been involved in Oregon City decision making or new to kind of being volunteer in the city. So we've been seeing a lot of new voices, which I'm really excited about. And over the first year of this process, they worked through online surveys, outreach opportunities, project advisory team meetings to help create a vision. I kind of think of it as like a mission statement. And that vision was adopted this last summer and is available on the website. And through all of this process, all the interaction, we've been gathering kind of people's comments related to the vision and start crafting goals that we think kind of reflect what we've heard from people, as well as looking through our existing comprehensive plan and trying to see what goals and policies still track in our community. And so let's go to the next slide. Really what tonight, my meeting objective for the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee is to obtain initial feedback on draft goals and policy ideas if you have them. I know some people may have read it and may want to be ready to make comment tonight, and I'm happy to take any comment down. The Parks and Rec Advisory Committee could provide formal feedback if you want through a separate meeting. That's fine too. We want all feedback at any time that makes sense for this board. Or if you as an individual, and I really do encourage all individuals to visit the virtual comprehensive plan forum, which is on the website OC 2040, and that'll be open through mid-March. And it's a way to really dive in and provide your individual comment on a goal or policy, or maybe there's an implementation item that you don't want us to miss or you think is really important. It may be connected to a goal or policy you're really passionate about. So if there's anything that you'll get out of tonight's meeting is go visit the virtual comprehensive plan forum, which is on the website through March 14th. Where we are in the project schedule, we spent most of 2020 working on the vision statement, which is that collecting people's aspiration, goals, thoughts, visions, and created a vision statement based on 4 topics. That was adopted by the City Commission, and now we're working on the actual plan and the goals and policies, which will be moving toward planning and City Commission hearings later this year. As with all project schedules, we're not too sure the exact date, so it's most likely not going to be March. If you're looking here where my cursor is, this may be pushed farther to 2020, but we are moving towards commission hearings. So developing draft goals and policy ideas. Once again, we took the vision statement, the vision process. There was 4 comprehensive plan summits this fall. For people who were involved, you may have gone to those based on the 4 topics of infrastructure, community, I have to remember it's on the next slide, natural resources, and I think housing. We had a coffee and comp plan drop-in series with our community development director. We had community online surveys, and we had 11 project advisory team meetings. So all of that information got kind of put in to these draft goals and policies. So here's the 4 topics: healthy and welcoming community, diverse economy, connected infrastructure, and protected environment. And instead of having kind of a more bureaucratic document that kind of went through very traditional topics, we were trying to create, and it's kind of really, I think, the theme that a lot of communities are doing, which is trying to create a more outward public document and reading and talking about vision in a way people understand. And so the goals and policies are all kind of woven through these 4 topics. What I'd like to do is I have 4 slides, and I will kind of quickly go through the 4 slides, which have the 4 topics and the 4 goals, and then the policy concepts. If you want to read each specific policy as it's written, you'll want to refer to your PDF, and it's in the packet of the PRAC agenda, and that has the actual goals and policies. It's a bit too much to put on each slide, but I'm happy, and when we have discussion, I can come back to any particular slide if you want to refer to it. But our first section is healthy and welcoming communities, and the 4 blue highlights are the 4 major goals, which is have a diverse and inclusive community engagement, protect and acknowledge historic and cultural resources, safe and healthy, comfortable neighborhoods, and integrative diversity, equity, and inclusive approaches. And there are policy concepts that flow beneath that, and the specific wording, once again, is attached as a PDF to your document. Diverse economy looks at dynamic, ecologically and socially equitable economy, housing options for all residents, maintaining the urban growth boundary, and sustainable site design and construction practices. Connected infrastructure looks at safe and equitable multimodal transportation system, maintain and improve public facilities and infrastructure, ensure health and safety through comprehensive service provisions, and resiliency and energy conservation. Protected environment looks at systems of trails, parks, and recreational amenities, function, health, and diversity of natural resources and ecosystems, and mitigate natural hazard risk and manage rapid response recovery. And the other key piece that I want to also bring into the conversation is in this process, actually, I'm going to scroll back a couple more slides so I can go back to this slide, which shows the vision, goals, policies, and then action implementation items. We worked through, reconciling and looking at the community's visions and the things they want through their goals and policies. But we're really now at a place in this process where we're going back to our boards and commissions, our departments, our planning commission, our city commission, because you have that community knowledge. You have that specific knowledge of the roles that you have expertise in. And so as we looking at some of these visions and goals, are there areas where we want to be a little bit more specific, or we want to be a little bit more direct about what we're trying to explain, or are there times when we want to provide guidance when there may be potentially competing goals and policies? When our city commission has to sit up in front of the dais at a future meeting in 2028 and they open this document up, how can we help provide future commissions guidance and future PRAC's guidance about how to make sure that their Parks Master Plan meets the vision, goals, and policies of the Oregon City Comprehensive Plan for future decisions? And so that's really what we're looking, and we reach out to boards and committees through these next couple months, is take a look at these goals and policies and see what additional guidance you can give us and give the Planning Commission, City Commission as we move forward. One thing we are doing, because action items are not going to be adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, but are going to be kind of a secondary supplementary action document that we can update more frequently instead of having to do a comprehensive plan amendment, which is complicated and land use wise. We want to have the action items to be a little bit more of a nimble document. That doesn't mean that you can't comment on potential action items through this process. We will kind of be putting in a holding document and looking back to see, you know, are one of the action items influencing a goal and policy, or do we see that as a potential action item that really can implement a community goal and policy? So I'm going to move back to my slides again. Apologies. So once again, the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission can give me comments this evening. You can give me comments in writing as the board itself. I'm happy to forward that on to Teresa Montalvo, our new planning manager, and the consultant team that's working on this. If you have individual comments, the best way to get your voices heard is do it through the forum, because that'll be collected by our consultant team and be able to be curated as we review public comments through this refinement process. So here's a little sneak peek of the comprehensive plan document. We've been talking about goals and policies, but it's brought into a larger document. And to the right are some examples of other communities' comprehensive plan. And there's a table of comments to your left, where we look at a little bit of background, how we came to create the comprehensive plan, the vision statement, our goals and policies, and the appendix. So through this process, as we are refining our goals and policies, asking what's missing, asking what needs to be further refined, our consultant team will be working on this, implementing it into the larger comprehensive plan, which again will be going to public hearings later in 2022. The next steps, as I mentioned, the comprehensive plan forum. Both myself and Teresa Montalvo will be visiting all of our city groups and committees in the next couple of months to have the same presentation and solicit feedback. There will be a planning commission, city commission update either in March or early April of 2022. So if you want to watch how the Planning Commission, City Commission are viewing the draft goals and policies and kind of their insight, you can follow that process. Oops. And I will get out of my screen for the moment and stop sharing. But really at this time, I'm happy to have a report back form. I'm happy to write comments and answer any questions you may have this evening. So I'll hand it back to PRAC.
Perfect. Thank you, Christina. Appreciate that. Brent, why don't you go ahead and share what you got?
Absolutely. Christina, great presentation. Thank you very much. My one comment is this was a very high-level presentation, but I'd really like to know specifically, because of the community of Oregon City and the old paper mill, what are we doing specifically to address the old paper mill of Oregon City as part of the plan for OC 2040? Mm-hmm. For me, this is a huge economic development opportunity for Oregon City, but whenever I see OC 2040, nothing ever really mentions it. And to be honest with you, I'm I don't like the high level, this is what we have. It's a lot of fluff. We need to be very specific about what we're doing with the old paper mill.
Well, I'm actually the very right person to have that question asked to, so I can give a little overview of that answer in a technical sense and kind of explain how that question is a great question in this conversation about larger goals and policies. So the former Westland paper mill is a private property that has been owned by a couple of owners since the property went into bankruptcy, and is currently owned by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. There is actually there's a land use master plan that has already been adopted for the site. It was adopted in 2014. And the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Ronde are looking at that, and they're working on their own private master plan, and they'll be working with the city on any needed amendments. So there actually has been an adopted vision for that plan. So the technical piece has been done. The larger question, I think what I'm hearing from you, Brent, you can let me know if I'm hearing this right. You're looking for do we need a detail in the comprehensive plan that it says Oregon City should support redevelopment of the mill in this and this way, or support? Are you looking for what kind of specificity are you seeing that? And this is just an example of the mill, but if there are other corollary projects of the specificity you're seeing as a policy that you think is missing in this document.
So thank you for addressing that. I think you brought up a great point. I think if Grand Ronde is having a master plan regarding the paper mill, it needs to be married into the OC 2040 plan. And how is that working?
Well, this is where I'm going to put my specific land use hat on. They have actually an adopted land use document already for the site. And so that spells out what the plan is for redevelopment, where the streets are, and they're looking at refining it and moving forward for developing. So that's a very specific, already approved development approval, which is a little bit different than how should the city support decision-making as it relates to potential projects, the ways that they could partner at the mill site. So that's a different, a goal or policy would be the city should ensure that decisions that are made help to integrate, as an example, help to integrate development at the former mill site with, improvement efforts downtown. That would be a goal or policy, because that's something the city can control, which is they can control, where they want to focus their energy at the places where it interacts with the private property, if that makes sense. But the private property already has an adopted plan.
Okay, let me ask a different question then. What can the city do in conjunction with the Grand Ronde tribe in terms of this property?
Well,
what input do they have?
Yeah, so this is a very specific land use question I think you're asking. I'm happy to kind of have a conversation after the meeting, but what you're asking is a perfect example of that's a specific, even though it seems it's a very important to coordinate with development at the former Blue Heron Paper Mill as it integrates with downtown. There could be a very specific policy that Oregon City wants to ensure that we do X, Y, and Z when decisions are made, or the city wants to spend money or enact budgetary decisions. But what a comprehensive plan won't do, it's not a development master plan. It's not going to be the specificity that you would have if you applied for a site plan and design review, or you applied for a master plan. So a comprehensive plan policy is comprehensive plan is supposed to live over the next 20 years. So it's looking at what are policies the city has as we make both budgetary and policy decisions about how the city wants to grow, or how the city wants to decide what projects they want to work on or not. Whereas the question you're asking is definitely more of a specific land use, and that would not have a part in a comprehensive plan.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Steve, go ahead.
Good evening, Christina. How are you this evening?
Good.
Good. Quick question for you. I looked and I may have missed it. I'll admit I didn't read every word, but one of the things that strikes me is that given where we are juxtaposed between the Willamette and the Clackamas, and we talked about it a little bit earlier this evening, we have a diversity of aquatic-based recreational activities. I was looking for a statement or an approach that described, maintain or enhance water-based recreational access or activities. Where does that fit in here? Or does it?
It does. It could fit into protected environment as well as healthy and welcoming communities. I would say, let me go back to the slides. I would say protected environment is probably, environmental tourism is probably can be there, or as well as economic development. So sometimes it can be shared between the two.
Well, there's just a lot of diversity of opportunity that's available to us. But given where we are and just how things go, it's easy to lose some of that too. And so it's something that I think we want to watch carefully, that we don't lose those current opportunities and we look for ways to enhance them. And we heard several different ideas of different things this evening that I thought that I hadn't even thought of. So that's something we ought to be thinking about.
Great.
Thank you.
Steve, did you have any more? You're good?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Tim, please.
Hey, Christina, thanks for your presentation. You've been dealt a difficult task in the fact that this is a very broad and wide document that does not talk about specifics, and it doesn't go to one particular park or the other, but just generally speaking. So it's not Ken talking about or Steve talking about specifics. Water, it doesn't say the cove. Man, there's so many opportunities around the cove you do with water and all that kind of stuff. But I guess that's probably what we're looking for right there. But it sounds like this is an answer that the commission is going to go ahead and hammer out, given these broad concepts.
It is true, but I think, and the reason why we're going to PRAC and TAC and CIC and all these things is, even though this, we want to honor the kind of broad initial process that we heard from the community, but I also want to hear from you. If there are implementation projects you think you're passionate about, I think sometimes we can pull the thread back to a really pertinent goal and policy as well. So I'm happy diving into detail with this group and then pulling back and being like, could this turn back into a policy that maybe has some more specific language, but not too specific? Or is this really something that's mentioned? Is this really an implementation item? And I'm just going to make up one that's like complete phase 2 of Abernathy Park, right? That's an implementation item. That's not a policy, right? But if you think and I'm making phase 2 as an example, if you think something is so important that it should be an implementation item, so I kind of go back and dig, why is it so important to you? And they kind of ask the Socratic why, and maybe that might get to a policy that's really important. So I'm okay taking implementation items that you think are really important, because it may help us get to the why if we have our policies correct.
Okay, to elaborate on that. So it's provide additional parklands to adequately serve the city's current and future needs. It's like, do we have a number of parks per 1,000 people that you want to go ahead and implement? I mean, that would be the question. Thank you.
Great, thank you. This is all good.
Thank you, Tim. Ken?
You're muted.
You're muted, Ken.
Sorry, I'll get used to that in a minute.
It's only 2 years, you're fine.
Yeah, right. Well, it's my first meeting, so.
Okay.
But how is the park master plan gets adopted into the comp plan somehow, right? Is it just an appendix?
It's
or is it a-
it's called an ancillary document to the comprehensive
Okay.
plan. So when you redo your parks master plan at some point, you will be showing compliance with the comprehensive plan that is enacted at the time you do your parks master plan to show compliance with it. So are there things that you want to seed into this comprehensive plan that I think will help your parks master plan, or vice versa, to really think about? Because this should be adopted in 2022. So when you adopt a revised parks master plan, this will be the comprehensive plan you'll be showing compliance with.
Right, and then the park master plan actually kind of serves as that action item, most of those action items. So it seems like we want to make sure that everything that we do in the park master plan fits those goals that fold into the comp plan, and that's where our focus should be, probably more. So I just want to and then I guess my other question was, if the park master plan gets adopted, and and even that document won't have a lot of the specificity that'll dribble all the way down to a specific site. It may or may not. If in fact it does and it gets adopted, then do we still have to go through land use as well for a park, say a new park, if it's already been adopted in the park master plan, if a site plan's already been adopted?
Well, the difference between site plan and master plan, as I'm sure Kendall understands and is frustrated with, we're the planners actually, any development application requires a site plan design review to meet requirements. So I always see having your parks master plan adopted is really the go ahead from the city and city commission saying go forth and build. You have and then the actual development application gets to more details. So you still always have to do site plan and design review when you actually for the development application.
Which then in turn would then help guide how much specificity we want to put into even to the master plan. Then if we have to go all the way down to the weeds in design review, then everything else should be at probably a little bit higher level, so that we're not in conflict with those two plans. Then is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, you don't want to have your master plan so specific that it's really hard to implement, because there's always changes on the ground that are going to do design refinement. And you don't want to be so specific in your master plan that you aren't complying with it because of a design refinement, because of reality.
That, and then the redundancy of the planning processes too, that we don't want to. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's this perfect example of comprehensive plan is vision's biggest picture. Comprehensive plan goals and policies are a little bit more specific, and then you get to your master plans, your parks master plan, your transportation system plan, your utilities master plan that get more specific. But there are times when you might have a more specific goal and policy in the comprehensive plan, because it really is such a big community priority, or if a city commission really is identifying priorities over other items when there is conflict, that is helpful for future decision making. But you have to be kind of really careful about putting really specific goals and policies in your comprehensive plan that'll last 20 years. But you also don't have it so vague that it's not helpful, right? It's this tightrope we're all trying to walk.
Brent, you had some more?
Yep. Thank you very much, Christina. You brought up some great points, and I just want to echo what Ken talked about. We have our site plan, we have our master plan, and the one thing that you said, Christina, that really echoed with me was your whys. I'm a project manager. I'm a Six Sigma black belt. And, you know, when you want to get down to a root cause analysis, you have to ask the 5 whys. And I appreciate you saying that. So I guess what I'm trying to really say here is this is a very important thing that PrAC needs to be aware, because this will impact how we serve the community with our parks and recreation development. And we can't just let this be hoity-toity or highfalutin. What I'm trying to say is we need to be very aware of what we want to plan and develop for the next plans for Oregon City within the 2040 scope of what Christina presented tonight. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Brent. Any other final comments or questions for Christina? Okay, Christina, I just want to say I'm always impressed with your work, and I was even more impressed with the multiple times you, without hesitation, said specificity and didn't even stumble and said it accurate. Like, that's got to be a record.
Specific, yeah,
like,
specific specificity. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to say that, but you just jumped right in and used it appropriately. I think that deserves to be on a resume. I mean, that's
can say specificity. Actually, no, can you say sufficient specificity, which was in our land use preamble, which was really hard to say. Thank you, everybody. I want to make sure that I leave the meeting and everyone goes home, and the next week or two, you actually respond yourselves in the forum. But if kind of just giving you timeline, if this is something PrAC really wants to provide formal comments on, the February, I'm not putting anything on your February meeting, but the February meeting is a great time to do it, because we can get formal comments integrated in this next round, which kind of closes mid-March. If you even need to wait till the March meeting, it won't be that bad, but I can make sure that those comments are integrated into the kind of the next iteration that is then sent to the Planning Commission and City Commission. So that would be really helpful. If anything formal wants to be said, that's helpful. And once again, we're not adopting implementation projects, but sometimes it's you zone in on the project you really want, and then go back and ask, put it in, because we're collecting them, but then go keep asking why it's so important, and does that reflect on the goals and policies today. And I'm really asking for this tightrope, which is we can't be too specific, but we also can't be too vague. So I'm really welcome all of your expertise and passion as it relates to parks.
And when is your February meeting?
No, your February meeting.
Oh, you're doing our February. That's where we would gather them.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. When I'm not putting anything on your agenda, but if that's something you wanted to do, that's a great meeting to do it, because I can then forward that on to the consultant team. If you want to do it in your March meeting, we probably could do it too, and I could forward that on.
So let me say that this way for all the members, as advocates of the city, or of the citizens, excuse me, we can individually give comments to Christina, and you're always welcome to do that and send them to her directly. She's still going to listen to them.
Actually, and do it through the forum. That's the better way, because it gets integrated.
Yeah. And then
your email will be lost in the shuffle as I send it to the consultant team. So do it in the forum.
And you'd be speaking on your own, but as a member of PrAC, of course, we know that we're also speaking based on the conversations we've had outside of our meetings. Now, if somebody thinks that we need to put this on the agenda, then certainly send that message to me, and we'll get it on the agenda as a formal item to discuss, at which point we can, as a collective body, PrAC, send a letter or an email to Christina through the forum, so that it can be considered as PrAC, the organization.
Formal meeting can be sent through me, is totally fine.
Yeah, so however we want to do that, at this point, I'm going to leave it open. Everyone can do their own individual, but if somebody wants to bring it as an agenda item, then just send me the message and we'll take care of that. Christina, thank you for your time. Always appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
All right, bye. I sent everybody a copy of the bylaws. Many of you have had that already, but I attached a copy, and I sent you proposed changes. These are some, as I went through the bylaws, these are some that I picked out. My intent here was to kind of clean up and be a little more clear on some things. My intent was not to suggest the bylaws are wrong or bad or we need to redo them. So if somebody thinks that they need to be revamped or completely, you know, scrubbed clean or something, we can certainly do that. But my intent here was just a few things as I've reviewed them over the last several months. I've just noticed some inconsistencies and some things that I thought were pretty benign, pretty simple to clean up. And so that's why I proposed those. So just for the purposes of the public, you've all had, you know, received these with the bylaws, but for the purpose of the public, and since it's a public meeting, I will kind of go over them, and then I'll go, there's only 3 points, and I'll address each of them. Actually, you know what, let me do this. Let me just do one at a time, and then we'll take questions and comments on each one. That way we don't get confused with bouncing back and forth. So the first thing I'm proposing is in section 5, item number 4. It says no committee member shall serve more than 2 consecutive terms. A 1-year absence is required before the member can be reappointed to a new term. And I'm recommending that we remove this item entirely from the bylaws. My rationale for that is that we've struggled over the years to have a full 9 members on PrAC. And the purpose of this, I think, makes sense. It gives a break, gives someone else an opportunity and whatnot. At the same time, that's not an issue we face right now. The issue we face and have faced for about the last 4 years is having enough people on PrAC. There was a time, I believe it was a year or 2 ago, I think it was 2 years ago, where somebody wanted to serve on PrAC and could not because of this rule. And then we still ran that year short a member, even though we had a willing member. I think in some cases, I don't look at this as term limits per se, because at term limits, you've got voting, it goes to the public. And this is a way to kind of make that decision for the public, if you will. But in our case here, the process is the mayor appoints somebody. And so and I'm going to use the term she because Mayor Lau Smith currently, but it could be anybody, male in the future. But the mayor currently has the ability to say, hey, I think this applicant needs a break, and I'm going to choose a different applicant for that reason. So it doesn't mean that when we remove this, that people are just going to be flooding in and they're going to be stuck here we're going to be stuck with them, or this community is going to be stuck with them for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because the mayor always has the ability to say, hey, you know what, you've served a lot. We'd like you to serve in a different area, or take a step down. We'll bring someone else in. And then they have the chance, next year or 2 years later to apply. So that's my rationale. That's my thoughts. Any questions, comments, or opinions on that piece? And I can certainly address those. This is not a vote right now. This is just, do you have questions for me as to why I would suggest this, or maybe an opposing opinion would be fine as well. Steve, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not familiar with the issues of filling the positions you described, because I wasn't here. I know that my experience finding out about the opportunity that I was afforded here, it was only by happenstance that I happened to find out about the opportunity to do this. Has the issue been more about just not getting the word out that the opportunity's there, or are there just not people willing to serve? I mean, it may not be, that's kind of a rhetorical question, but is it that we're not doing as good a job reaching out and letting people know that there are opportunities that are available? Because I like the idea of having diversity and some turnover. I went and looked at a number of the other committees and boards that are involved in the city. Almost all of them, most have some type of a term kind of an approach to them. Some of them very similar to what we deal with here. So I'm wondering if our problem is just not getting the word out enough, because
Okay. Yeah,
it was difficult for me to find out for the office.
yeah, and I can address that. And just before I do, I probably should have said this in the beginning, so I'll insert this in here. We are not in a position to make changes to the bylaws. That has to be the city commission. So what we will be able to do tonight is simply make a recommendation to the commission to consider this proposal, and then they make the choice. So keep that in mind when you kind of vote or have an opinion, that we're really not making a decision. We're simply putting it before those that can. So Steve, to ask you, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, and I don't think there is anybody to throw under the bus here, but I'll tell you, the communication about the position comes from the city. So it's not a PRAC responsibility or even anything we can do, because it's got to be put on through city emails and social media and that sort of thing. I will say that the city probably can do it, and I would say we, if we had part of that responsibility, because I don't think they're doing anything different than maybe we would do. I think they can do a better job of putting it out there, but that might be a discussion for a different day. At the same time, that's not our function. So yes, we can all do a better job getting the message out there, no question. However, that's not, in my opinion, not the biggest issue. The biggest issue has simply been we don't have enough applicants. Now, regardless of the reason we don't have additional applicants, removing this required break would give us the ability to then have potential applicants who normally would be done with their term and they'd have to take a year off. They may or may not want to stay and they could apply again. So I think the discussion can be had about maybe, you know, getting the word out there, but that doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't really affect this piece.
Okay.
It could solve, it would solve the problem of having more applicants, but it wouldn't solve it doesn't really apply to when we don't have enough applicants, what do we do about it? And my suggestion is this is one way to help that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on that piece or thoughts? Okay, the next one is section 6, item 6. And it reads, formal agenda items must be submitted to the staff representative 5 working days prior to the meeting date. And I propose that we remove to the staff representative 5 working days and insert to the chair or PRAC chair 10 working days in prior to the meeting. My rationale on that is that PRAC represents the community, and the bylaws already set up that the resignation of a PRAC member must come through the chair, and that really this needs to be, we need to take things off of staff's plate and expect staff to always come to us and always tell us and always do things. We need them. They're valuable. At the same time, I don't believe should rely on them. We should be running PRAC meetings as we conduct, and then using them as resources and helping them more than we're expecting them to do for us. And this would be consistent with, you know, things like resignations come through PRAC. I've had guests reach out to me and say, can I come speak to PRAC, or will you write a letter on my behalf? And this would be consistent with suggesting that all agenda items come through the chair. I will tell you, having met with Kendall and Justin over the last year, that when we go into our meeting for an agenda, I get surprised a lot of times because agenda items, they're going to come from the city, and they should, but then there's some that come from community members and PRAC members that I didn't even know about, and I'm only finding out a week before the meeting. And so I think it takes it off their plate. They don't have to respond to those emails. They can come to the chair. The chair, they're still going to be brought forward. That doesn't change. It's not about whether they get put on the agenda or not. That doesn't change. It's just who it comes through, takes it off their plate. And then in the past, it was 5 working days. The problem is we meet about 8 to 10 working days prior to the meeting. So after we've set the agenda and made the public notice of the agenda, then our bylaws allows that other agenda items simply get slipped in there, which on occasion is okay. We just have to repost. So if we change it to 10, it solves a lot of that problem. Keep in mind, that does not mean that on an emergency or something that's urgent, that doesn't mean we can't insert it within that 10-day period. We can always do that for things that really, really matter. Any questions or comments on that?
I had one.
I was hoping you would, Ken, because coming from the other side of things too, you probably see it both ways, but go ahead.
I think the one thing that would help or be helpful for can you hear me now this time? Couldn't remember if I got it right. Okay, sorry. Was that maybe it makes sense. I agree with the principle of it and all of that, but I think that to kind of help that along, the board should vote to approve the agenda before the meeting, as part of that initial front side of that meeting, because a lot of times stuff will get piled up and you just know there's no way you're going to get through it all tonight. And so I think if we voted to approve the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, that might facilitate that a little bit.
So are you talking about vote to approve the agenda the night of the agenda is being used?
Yes.
Okay, and we could do that as part of, well, I guess maybe we'll talk about how to facilitate that, but maybe we, instead of approval, maybe we put approval of the minutes and approval of the agenda, separate items under the consent.
Yeah, it's usually approve the agenda first, and then, because then that's also an opportunity if there is kind of an emergency thing to slip in, at least it's not, everybody knows that we're going to walk into that, so that it's not just something that's just kind of snuck in at the last minute. And I know that's not the intent of all of that, but sometimes the perception is that.
Well, and I think it would also give the opportunity to handle things the way similar to how we did tonight, where if there needs to be changes to the agenda, that would be the time to do it rather than almost create an agenda item for the motion. So
exactly.
that might be valuable too. We just have to be careful with that, because when we post it to the public, if we stick something in there on the agenda that was not posted, we've got public meeting law requirements, and then we have just simple courtesy of discussing and voting on something that nobody knew about, therefore couldn't speak. So
absolutely.
We have to be careful with what we implement there, but I think the intent would be good. Any other thoughts, Ken?
No, that was just the main one.
Okay, Steve?
Troy, one of the things I always look at the staff board relationship. I look at it maybe more than I should, and I'm brand new to this committee, so I don't know how it works exactly. But I always looked at these things kind of like a partnership between the city and the board. Our role, you've described it several times this evening. We're representing the citizens of Oregon City, but we also are in partnership with the city. Does this weaken that partnership, having it not come through the city to us? I mean, I'm not hearing, Kendall, you haven't said anything about it being a problem, or I mean, is there a workload issue here, or what are we facing?
Well, if I can answer before Kendall, because I'm going to say there isn't a workload issue in the sense that nobody's falling short with their responsibilities to get this.
Sure.
However, anything that we can pull off of their plate just means it's just something. I don't care if we take 5 minutes away from them or 50 minutes away from them. It's just something else they could do if this is a function of ours, let's do it. And then to your point, Steve, if you look on the agenda, items 2, 3, and 4 came from the city. So I'm not suggesting that everything comes through the board. I'm talking about, or the chair, I'm saying anything from the city and staff is still going to come to us at that agenda discussion meeting. It's just everything else, anything basically from the community or from committee members come through the chair, because for a committee member to go to Kendall and then Kendall to bring it to me is that's extra work that needs to happen. It just should come to me, and then we can get it on the agenda and keep that off their plate. Kendall, you can add to that, but I want to make it clear that nobody's falling short. I just simply think we can do stuff that we don't have to ask them to do. But Kendall, your thoughts?
One of the things that's important to remember is obviously now I do have Justin, who's my administrative assistant, which has helped tremendously in managing some of this stuff. But the importance of getting information in a timely fashion is really important to me and to my staff, because we're required to post this on our website in Unicode to the public 7 days in advance of the meeting. So making sure that we have the appropriate information in a timely fashion before we're scheduled to post it is really critical for us in our role to continue to serve PrAC and serve the community. The other aspect of it is we want to be prepared for these meetings. So if there are topics that the community is interested in and wants us to address, or there are topics that PrAC wants us to address, we need to be able to get those topics well in advance so we can prepare, so we can meet those necessary deadlines. I think what's been really good with our relationship with the chair and the vice chair is the opportunity to sit down with them and talk through some of the things that have come our way that we need to talk about and talk about putting on the agenda. Some of the topics that we have that we need feedback from PrAC and recommendations from PrAC so we can all be on the same page. I think where we struggle is if things are thrown at us at the last minute and we have to scramble to try to get the necessary staff and necessary information and get that information posted to the public. So anything that we can do in regards to timing and making sure we're communicating appropriately so we can get that information up is going to be critical to both of us being successful.
Well, and Troy, you're not suggesting in any way to reduce that coordination meeting that you're having with the city. You're suggesting you do it a little bit sooner, like 10 days instead of 5, to address some of what Kendall just described, which was having enough time to be prepared. It sounds as though
That's exactly right. It's simply for streamlining. And if we look at 5 working days versus 7 days, public meeting rules, depending on holidays and weekends,
right,
one could not be honored, and then we have a problem. And so the 10 days opens that up. The other piece is, let's say that there's 3 of you or 3 of us on the committee that want to talk about the same topic. I think I would rather field those, right? I get 3 separate emails, and I could be the one that communicates that says, hey, Ken, thanks for bringing that up. Joey already mentioned it to me. We'll get it on there. And I can address those emails rather than Kendall or Justin have to deal with all of those emails. And then just before our meeting, I can say, hey, Kendall, here's 3 items I'd like you to add. He adds them, we discuss them. But now I've fielded all those emails and taken that legwork and that minutia away from them so they can do things that are more efficient. Joey, go ahead.
Yeah, I first and foremost, I think the recommendation of 10 working days, or even just 10 calendar days, but 10 working days makes a lot of sense, especially with that requirement to post the agenda publicly 7 days prior. My main question in terms of community members reaching out is how accessible is the chair's contact information? Like, to me, and I'll plead ignorance, I don't know if your information is on the city website. I don't remember. That's how I found out about this opportunity in the first place, just perusing the city website. And I'm sure that like staff members are pretty easy to find on the website, but what about contact information for the chair?
I honestly don't remember. Kendall, I can't remember if I know that, city commission and staff and all that's on there, but I don't remember if the chair, vice chair, or even members currently serving are on there on the website.
I think your information might be on there, but I don't know into what I can pull it up and check.
Okay. So while he's doing that, I think, Joe, that's a good point. We got to make it accessible to him. We got to keep in mind too, the bylaws are for how we operate. It doesn't necessarily say how the public has to operate. So if the public sends something to Kendall, then, he just takes it as it is, or he forwards it to me and says, FYI, that way I can consider it with maybe other information that I already have that he's not aware of. But because this is the bylaws of our committee, it's really saying everybody in the committee needs to email the chair versus Kendall and get that off of his plate.
Yeah, I just was thinking like, I don't think I want a situation where a member of the public reaches out to Kendall and he just has to say, well, that's a good idea or a bad idea or whatever, but please take it to over here instead. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that piece right there is maybe a little bit more logistics or process that, you know, Kendall and Justin and I say, hey, you know what, if I get something from the public, I'm just going to send it to you so that you can, you know, compile it, keep track of it. But that's probably something we can't put in the bylaws because it's
No, for
bylaws
sure,
about we
for sure.
publish it and then we're
Yeah,
telling them.
But just
yeah, I think-
logistically and kind of process wise, I think that makes sense that, you know, Kendall or Justin or whoever on the staff side doesn't have to just, you know, like pass somebody off. Like the process is that, yeah.
And the information that's shared is my information and my assistant director's information on our website. So people reach out to us directly. And just so everyone's aware too, we have no problem fielding any request. And Troy and I communicate very well, and I have no problem sharing that information with him and filtering that through him. So
Yeah.
it won't be a problem.
Yeah, and for the record, and again, no one's fallen short here. This is just some things I've noticed that I think might help. And I agree, Kendall and I, we call as often as we need to. We've always communicated well. And sometimes as he walks by my house and I'm eating breakfast, I wave at him out the window. So, you know, it's not a problem at all. I think today, didn't we pass in driving, Kendall? We waved at each other. So yeah, we communicate quite often. Ken, did you have more on this or?
Well, yeah, just real quickly, I just kind of wanted to reiterate that it's not really, the staff doesn't necessarily work for us. And so I want to make sure that, you know, this doesn't enable us to go off on some tangent that the commission or staff or everybody's just going, where did this come from? And why is this committee working on this when it doesn't meet any of the other goals or objectives either? So that you have to be kind of careful of that. But I think with the coordination between you and Kendall, that makes a lot of sense. I would also add that not every chair is going to be as ambitious as you are willing to do that much work either. And so it may very well next year go right back the other way. It's just kind of however each chair wants to work with the director. Because there's just times you know, people just have different approaches, and so that's just the main thing. But I just want to make sure that, you know, we're not all of a sudden going off on some tangent that doesn't really fit anybody else's goals or objectives.
No, and I appreciate that. And just for the record, mostly for those that are new, Kendall and Justin are the ones that physically create the agenda. So that doesn't, I mean, I can't miss anything that's important to them because they bring it on. And certainly if you guys email me and you never hear from me or never see it on the agenda, you will catch it and recognize that I fell short. So there's some pieces in there in place that people aren't going to get missed without, you know, some sort of recognition of, hey, can we get this on the agenda, right?
Well, and you're going to get, you know, I'm sure you get those kind of weird requests too, that, you know, somebody wants a project that's in their backyard or whatever, and and it's just like, oh, brother. And that's why I think kind of voting on the agenda and all of that falls into place. And so it's not throwing one person under the bus either. It's collectively, we kind of make those decisions of whether or not we're going to have the time or the desire to deal with that issue or not.
And Kendall, I think that's valuable just from a logistical standpoint, that we do approve the agenda that we're about to discuss. And that's an easy, put that on the current agenda, you know, right, either above or below the approval of minutes. So we don't have to put that in the bylaws, just the process piece that we can certainly add there. I think that's good.
Right.
Steve, did you have more?
Just a quick question. Is there any reason that we need to, again, recognizing you're very active in terms of a chair, someone else may not be. Is there any reason we need to codify in here the fact that there will be that coordination meeting or that coordination between the city and PRAC Because you're right now describing as being very effective. Is it something we need to just add at the end of one of these sentences? It says, and that will be a part of the way we do our business.
Well, I think that's a good point, and I kind of think of what Ken had said too about kind of make things getting dropped or overlooked or someone pushed aside. So I think we can, I know we can propose that that's added. And I guess what I'm suggesting and this is just off the cuff here, that under the meetings, we add another item that just says, because if you notice on number 4, it says Parks and Recreation staff shall be responsible for recording minutes for all meetings. Well, what if we put right below that, Parks and Recreation staff will be responsible for creating the agenda. So we've just now given them that ability, keeping it out of the hands of the chair for that checks and balances. And then with that, add something that might say, and coordinate with chair and or vice chair in doing so. Something like that, keeps it everything out of the hands of one person, but then puts in there that piece, Steve, that you're suggesting of coordinating.
Yep. I think that's just a good way that shows anyone reading our bylaws. It also shows them that there's that coordination going on between the parties. Wouldn't be a bad idea to have it.
Kendall, do you have any thoughts on just that piece about adding? You guys are already doing the agenda, so to put it in there that says that's what you're responsible for and that you'll coordinate with the chair. Any issues there?
No, we don't have any issues with that. But what I did want to bring up is we've never gone past 10 o'clock before. And the Zoom meeting is set to end at 10. So I just wanted to make everyone aware that if there's a need for us to extend the meeting, if you guys want to talk about that.
Well, yeah, our bylaws say 10 o'clock. So I don't know if we can actually go past 10. And honestly, I'm fine if we don't. Yeah, it says end no later than 10. So we probably should end with the bylaws discussion. So is there any more quick questions on this piece? And I'll go over the next one. We'll try to wrap this up. Okay.
I'll take my hand down. Sorry.
Okay. And the last one I have is section 6, item 7. Citizens may introduce future agenda items at the beginning of each meeting. And then in parentheses says limited to 5 minutes. The the proposal I'm making is citizens may make comments and introduce future agenda items at the beginning of each meeting, limited to 3 minutes. Now, according to our bylaws, citizens do not get the ability to do anything other than future agenda items. And I don't think that's the intent of that, because it basically says when Jerry came in today and gave us his thoughts that was not allowed according to our bylaws, but we've always allowed it because I think that's the intent and understanding. So I want to add in there comments and introduce. Then if you're under common, it's common that in a public meeting, everyone gets 3 minutes, not 5. And if you look in our agenda under public comment, it says they get 5. But if you look at the bottom about public comment guidelines from the city, it says 3. So even in our own agenda, we're conflicting. We've got 5 and we've got 3. And our bylaws say 5. I just want to change it to 3 so that when you walk in, everybody knows that whether you're at a commission meeting, a PrAC meeting, a school board meeting, any public meeting, it's just 3, that's standard. Any questions about 3 and comments and introduce versus just introducing future agenda? Any comments at all? And I'm ready to make a motion since I made the proposal, but is there any comments before that?
Nope.
All right, then I move to amend the bylaws pending approval of City Commission as proposed in items section 5, number 4, section 6, number 6, and section 6, number 7, as provided. In addition, to add an item under section 6, making it the responsibility of staff to create the agenda item or the agenda after collaboration with PrAC chair. Do we have a second?
I second.
Brent with the second. Justin, you want to poll?
Yep. Karen,
Karen's
Karen,
muted.
you muted.
Justin, why don't you go ahead and come back to her?
Tim,
Aye.
Troy,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Joey,
Aye.
Brent,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
and back to Karen.
Karen, you are muted.
Aye.
All right.
There you go.
So according to our bylaws, we have 4 minutes left before we have to end our meeting. What's left on the agenda is staff reports, future agenda items. For those that are new, this is an opportunity to give a report or agenda items. It's not your only time for the agenda items. Like we said, you can email those. In the interest of time and trying to stay with our bylaws of 10 o'clock, I am going to make a motion that we move past staff reports and agenda items, table the staff reports for next meeting, and the agenda items can be delivered by email and therefore still get on the agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So Justin, that was a second by Steve. And Justin, you have your hand up. We have a discussion. So did you have a discussion about that piece?
Well, I needed Karen's vote for the bylaws.
I think she said aye. Karen, is that correct?
Did she?
Yeah, she slipped her aye in there.
Okay, I didn't hear it. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Any discussion on the motion on the table?
I actually have an issue with the motion on the table, Troy.
Okay, go for it.
I wanted to talk if there was any update on the Park Place housing development.
Yes.
There was supposed to be an
Okay.
update on this.
I
Kendall!
don't mean to cut you off. Yes, that was
All right.
part of my update. I did follow up with the city manager. He did follow up with the neighbors who were interested in purchasing that property. However, we don't believe anything has moved forward in regards to any kind of negotiations with the person who was wanting to develop that property, but the developer has not moved forward with any development since our last conversation. So as we know it right now, there's no development going on, and there's still neighbors who are interested in purchasing the property, but they haven't moved forward with those negotiations at this time.
Okay. For the new chair members, just a little bit of history. Park Place Park in the Park Place neighborhood is the only park, and there was some property available, and somebody purchased some property and wanted to develop a house up there, or they wanted to develop the property and use the access road through the park as their main entrance to that property. So that is a big issue. And so I want Joey and Ken and Steve to be aware of this, that this may be an ongoing discussion. That's all.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other discussion about the motion? I hate to do it. We've never had to do this in our meetings before, guys. We've never had to cut it off at 10 o'clock, but we're here now. Usually we get it done in time. So Justin, can you poll, please?
Yes. Ken,
Yes.
Joey,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Brent,
What are we polling for?
To move the agenda items, to table them for next time because of time.
Aye.
Tim,
Yep.
Troy,
Yes.
and Karen.
Aye.
So I hate to do it, but we're at 10 o'clock right now. Next meeting is February 24th. Please email me all the agenda items. Kendall and Justin, you have the email from me plus that one addition we made. If that's not sufficient, let me know and I'll give you more. But if it is, then we can take that to the city commission.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good
Okay.
night. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.